Chapter 959. As he quietly approached, Wang Sheng found two snow rats hiding in the snow. He originally planned to drive them away, but he suddenly had an idea. He used the 5 words formula to command the two snow rats to come closer and jump onto Wang Sheng's hands. The two snow rats were not big. They were only the length of Wang Sheng's forearm and palm. Their pure white fur was glossy and smooth, and it was obvious that their fur was good. However, Wang Sheng was not thinking about their fur. He just found two smaller bodyguards for himself. Although the two snow rats were small, and Wang Sheng could catch one in each hand, they were obviously very strong since they could survive in the coarse circle of the place of despair and live so comfortably. At least when facing the giant white bear, the two snow rats did not show the slightest bit of fear. They were already within a mile, but the two snow rats did not escape. Wang Sheng could not think of any other reason for them to be so fearless. At the beginning, it seemed that the giant bear was vigilant, which explained everything. Under the control of the 5 words formula, the two snow-white snow rats obediently climbed onto Wang Sheng's back, one on the left and one on the right. They grabbed Wang Sheng's protective suit tightly, and two small heads popped out from his shoulders. Then, they remained motionless, waiting for Wang Sheng to take them away. When they were close to the city of ice, Wang Sheng let the giant bear lie down in the snow. He once again sensed his surroundings. There was no one on the surface of the city of ice. Only then did he jump off the giant bear's back and slowly make his way over. When he got closer, he realized that the ice city was definitely not small. Thinking about it, it was normal. To dig a large area, to find the entrance to the peerless treasure, wouldn't the excavated things have to be piled up outside? Would they have to backfill it? The excavated ice cubes were fine, but the soil and stones could only be piled up. These materials could not be piled up casually, or the strong wind would blow them back into the dug hole. They could only find a way to mix with the ice cubes and make them into regular shapes. After they were frozen and hardened, they could be used to build the city. After more than a year, the 9 legendary pinnacle experts had definitely dug out a lot of things. It could be seen that the 9 experts at the peak of the legendary realm had put a lot of thought into it. What they built was not a square city, but a thick windproof wall that blocked and dissipated the wind in the direction of the astral winds. Behind it was a long and thin arch structure. This kind of structure was very useful in places like this where the wind was particularly strong. The main structure was like this, and there were 2 or 3 similar smaller buildings around it. Needless to say, the entrance to dig down was inside these buildings. It was convenient to transport the excavated soil out. The buildings were tall and sturdy. They were also covered in a layer of ice. Even an ordinary expert would only be able to destroy a small part of it. It would be impossible to destroy the entire building. Sometimes being frozen really did have such benefits. After making a small detour outside, Wang Shengkai found a stone door in a place with its back to the wind. The reason why it was judged to be a door was because the stone slab was not covered in ice, and it looked like it could be pushed in or out. The little person with combat awareness did not sound the alarm, so it could only be said that there was no one within a few miles. Wang Sheng boldly grabbed the simple handle on the stone slab. It seemed to be deliberately left behind. He gently pushed it, but it did not move. Wang Sheng immediately changed the direction and pulled outwards. The stone slab loosened. Given Wang Sheng's strength, he was able to easily pull out the stone slab that was half a foot thick. There was also a similar handle inside the stone slab, which was convenient for people to enter and exit. The door was actually not big. It was taller than a person and wider than a person. It was dark inside, and he could not see anything clearly for the time being. This was normal, as it would be the same in places that were bright and dark. Wang Sheng sniffed. There was no smell inside, so he boldly walked in. When he went in, Wang Sheng did not forget to pull the stone slab back. This stone slab could block some small and powerful monsters that were not intelligent enough, so he could not ignore it. In less than 5 seconds, Wang Sheng's vision had adapted to the darkness inside. Except for the glimmer of light in the gap of the door, everywhere else was dark. Wang Sheng did not light a torch. In a dark place, suddenly lighting a torch would definitely tell the living creatures in the dark that there was a good target. When Pu Lao changed, Wang Sheng had another ability. He could emit some ultrasonic waves that humans could not hear. Coincidentally, when Xionyou changed, Wang Sheng's hearing was further strengthened, and he could also hear some ultrasonic waves that humans could not hear. With the combination of the two, Wang Sheng chanted the ultrasonic 9 secret words formula. Relying on the reflection of the ultrasonic waves, Wang Sheng could completely hear the structure in the dark. This was what Wang Sheng learned from the bad, and it was the right time to use it. After gently moving a dozen steps, Wang Sheng had already figured out the internal structure of the building. After figuring it out, Wang Sheng smiled. No wonder people often said that true knowledge comes from practice. He did not know what kind of danger the 9-peak legendary expert had experienced to think of using a double-story building and opening the door in different directions as much as possible to avoid letting the warm breath of humans immediately leak out and attract the attacks of ferocious monsters. Yes, the reason why this building was so tall was because there was another floor inside. It was the same principle as the double-story ice house that Wang Sheng had built in the core of the Land of Thousand Despair with old Taoist Ling, Su, and the 3 royal consecrators. What was more interesting was that the door of the inner layer was not placed on the ground, but on the wall that was about the height of a person. The inner layer of the building itself was round like a steamed bun. If one entered from the stone door just now, they would be able to return to the stone door after making a circle. Without enough light, they could not see the door on the wall at all. These guys were really cautious. Wang Sheng smiled, put his hands on the inner layer of the building and the wall, and quickly climbed up to the door on the wall. After trying to push the stone slab open, Wang Sheng was still unable to do so. Thus, he switched to pulling. After pulling the stone slab open, Wang Sheng once again silently entered the even darker inner building. The 2 snow mice did not make a sound at all, and obediently climbed on Wang Sheng's back, grabbing onto Wang Sheng's protective suit, not hindering Wang Sheng's movements at all. Even if someone saw Wang Sheng's figure at this time, they would only think that Wang Sheng was alone and would not think that Wang Sheng had brought 2 little warriors with him. This time, there was no longer any light, and it was completely dark inside. However, this did not prevent Wang Sheng from easily determining what was inside. There was a large ice cave with regular, man-made ice steps that went diagonally down. It was unknown how deep it led. Clearly, after Wang Sheng left, this was the main entrance that the 9 of them had been digging for. Chapter 960. The hole was dark, and there was no light at all. This was normal, and Wang Sheng was not surprised, but Wang Sheng found it strange that from this hole, Wang Sheng could not hear any sound coming from inside. Generally speaking, if it was digging underground, other places might be better, but in this kind of hole, it must be the place where multiple sounds converge, so it would definitely be heard clearly. There were a few reasons for this situation to happen. Either the people below did not start to dig, or the people digging were very careful, afraid of disturbing something. So they used some means, such as some array or a sound shielding cultivation method similar to the 3 great priests. Another possibility was that the passage was too long, and it was very winding, so the continuous reflection of the sound was offset, so it could not be heard. The feeling of the little person with battle awareness told Wang Sheng that at least within a radius of 5 miles, there was no human expert that Wang Sheng needed to be wary of. This also meant that these underground passages had exceeded the length of 5 miles. Looking for the treasure from a point on a treasure map that was not standardized, especially in this place where everything had been buried under the ice and snow, other than a large area of excavation, there was no other possibility. With the help of the ultrasonic walking formula, Wang Sheng could figure out everything in the passage without the help of a torch and walk down without any scruples. Even if there was definitely an array in the passage, Wang Sheng did not have to worry about anything. The walking formula was used for this, not to mention that now that Wang Sheng had mastered the 5-word formula, the effect was even more powerful. The passage was not wide, at most a person's width, and 2 people would probably have to squeeze through. There was no other way. There were only 9 people, and if they wanted to find the peerless treasure in such a large place, they did not have the energy and time to dig further. When Wang Sheng walked, he had been using the hidden technique, and at the same time, the golden pattern of his soul essence was also activated, almost without any sound. After walking for at least 20 feet, which meant that it was almost more than 70 meters deep, he felt that he was not walking on ice, but stepping on the ground. When he got the boundary stone, Wang Sheng clearly remembered that the ice outside the core circle was only a few dozen feet deep, but here, it actually increased by several feet. It seemed that the closer they got to the center, the more the ground sank. After descending for about 100 feet, Wang Sheng found that there were no more stone steps under his feet. Instead, it was flat ground. Needless to say, these people were very smart. If they started digging from the seam between the ice layer and the ground, the frozen soil would be even more difficult to dig. However, after descending another 100 feet, the temperature here was no longer as bone-chilling as it was outside. The surrounding soil was no longer frozen. From this, it could be seen that the Shur clan and the Gon clan had done their homework. They had even prepared an excavation plan. They didn't just rely on a few experts to dig without any prior knowledge. After walking for a while, about 20 to 30 meters, there were a few wider areas on both sides of the tunnel. Wang Sheng sensed around in the darkness. This should be the resting area that the experts had prepared for themselves after digging this place up. Further ahead, the tunnel split into two. Basically, at this point, Wang Sheng guessed that the two sides should have separated from here and dug separately. Whoever dug first would probably get the biggest share. Of course, it was impossible to hide it. Everyone was in the same tunnel, and there were people who had to pass through during the day and at night. It was impossible to hide it, so there should be an agreement in advance. As for which tunnel belonged to which family, Wang Sheng didn't know, and he didn't know which way to go. However, the problem was simple. The men were on the left, and the women were on the right. Wang Sheng directly turned to the left, and it would be whichever family he met. Still, he walked forward carefully and walked for about 7 or 8 miles in the tunnel. Every half a mile or so, there would be a spacious area, which should be a house that was dug out to rest. At this point, Wang Sheng had no choice but to admire them. These people had really put in a lot of effort. Putting everything else aside, just the fact that they were at the pinnacle of the legendary realm and were digging tunnels with hoes instead of swords was not something an ordinary legendary realm expert could do. No wonder the combat consciousness of the dwarf couldn't sense the existence of human experts when it was at the entrance of the tunnel. Just this tunnel alone was 100 meters deep, and it extended for 7 or 8 miles without an end. It would be strange if the dwarf with combat consciousness could detect it. Along the way, Wang Sheng encountered at least 4 formations. There was one at the bottom of the hole, where the soil had just been dug up, and 3 at the fork. Wang Sheng calmly and easily passed through all of them without triggering any attacks from the formations. Further ahead, it was still a dark underground tunnel. These experts had been digging for more than a year. Was this all they had done? Wang Sheng felt a little strange. Could it be that the peerless treasures had to be buried underground? Couldn't it be an area close to the surface? Or is it just on the surface? This was 100 feet deep underground. What could they dig out blindly? After walking for another 7 or 8 miles, the combat consciousness of the dwarf suddenly began to warn him. There were experts less than 5 miles ahead. For people should be from the Shur family. There were 5 people from the Gon family here. However, the 4 experts didn't dig anything. Instead, they were sitting quietly. Wang Sheng immediately understood that they should be cultivating. At this time, Wang Sheng didn't intend to meet these people. He turned around and went straight to the fork of the Gon family in another direction. Wang Sheng didn't know what was in the so-called peerless treasures, but if it was only money or something valuable, it would be meaningless to Wang Sheng. In the direction of the Shur family, the dwarf with combat consciousness didn't sense anything. Even if there was a hidden treasure, it wouldn't be something that could tempt Wang Sheng. The Gon family had one more person, and with the same amount of time, they should be able to dig a longer fork than the Gon family. Although the 2 families were working together, they were actually on guard against each other. For example, there was a formation in each fork, and it was a different formation. It was clearly to prevent the other party from peeping. The Gon family didn't seem to be digging in the Shur family's direction. He didn't know what the Shur family was thinking. They dug straight ahead and only changed direction after about half a mile. The Gon family wasn't afraid of wasting time and continued to dig in twists and turns. Could it be that they felt the possibility of finding the treasure in this area was higher? Following the Gon family's fork, Wang Sheng walked for about 10 miles and still hadn't found the Gon family. Suddenly, a direction gave Wang Sheng a very strong feeling. That place was about half a mile away from where Wang Sheng was. There was something that deeply attracted the combat consciousness of the dwarf. It was as if it wanted to rush over immediately. What was it? Chapter 9:61. He didn't know what it was, but it was definitely somewhere he hadn't dug out yet. Otherwise, Wang Sheng wouldn't have felt it so close. This was all thanks to Wang Sheng's recultivation. Without the 5-word formula, Wang Sheng wouldn't have such a strong sense of perception. The battle consciousness avatar wasn't omnipotent. Wang Sheng could tell that the stronger he was, the more powerful the battle consciousness avatar would be. If not for his improvement in cultivation and entering the core circle, the battle consciousness avatar wouldn't be able to control the giant bear and the 2 snow mice at the same time. What was there that could attract the battle consciousness avatar so much? Wang Sheng didn't understand, but there was one thing Wang Sheng was clear about. It wasn't gold or silver, nor was it some elixir or secret manual. Wang Sheng had a feeling that the battle consciousness avatar wouldn't care about these things. What could attract the battle consciousness avatar should be a very, very special tool. There was no formation, nor did it contain any spiritual energy. It was just a simple object. Perhaps it was worthless in the eyes of others, but to the battle consciousness avatar of Wang Sheng, it was extremely attractive. What should he do? Wang Sheng was faced with a problem. Should he dig it out himself? Or should he cooperate with the Shi family and the Gon family? This was a difficult problem. At least, Wang Sheng couldn't make a decision right away. Something that could attract the battle consciousness avatar. Wang Sheng was sure that it must be part of the so-called peerless treasure. If Wang Sheng dug it out himself, it would take more than 1 or 2 days for Wang Sheng to dig 70 meters deep into the ice alone, no matter how strong he was. Moreover, they were so close to each other. Even the slightest sound could travel far underground, and it would definitely alert the Shi and Gon families. Those 9 were legendary pinnacle experts, and they had been in the core circle of the place of Thousand Despair for more than a year. They wouldn't dare to say it out loud, but in the circle, they were definitely no worse than the 3 royal consecrators. It wouldn't be easy for Wang Sheng to hide it from these 9 experts. If they couldn't hide it, the consequences would probably be a fight to the death. The Shi family and the Gon family had put in so much effort in order to obtain the peerless treasures. They had let 9 legendary experts stay here for a year. If Wang Sheng came here alone, wouldn't it be a fight to the death? Should he ask these 9 experts to help him dig? That would save Wang Sheng a lot of time and energy. However, were they really going to push the peerless treasures to the 2 families? Isn't this letting them off too easily? To pay the price of a peerless treasure just for a single thing, wasn't this price a little too high? No matter how he thought about it, Wang Sheng couldn't decide which method to choose. However, since Wang Sheng had already found a place, and the 2 families obviously couldn't find a way to dig around, Wang Sheng would be able to take advantage of them. Since he was already there, and knew that they had wasted more than a year to dig around, that was enough to make Wang Sheng happy. However, since he was already there, Wang Sheng didn't intend to make a wasted trip. He had to get some benefits from them. After making up his mind, Wang Sheng walked along the tunnel for a while, and after confirming that the 5 of them were there and that they had been cultivating, he quietly exited the tunnel and returned to the first one. The 9 of them had basically stopped digging and were all immersed in cultivation. It was the same feeling that Wang Sheng had a few days ago. However, these guys were quite capable. It wasn't easy for them to slowly immerse themselves in cultivation after digging such a long tunnel. After thinking about it carefully, Wang Sheng smiled. It wasn't because of that, but because these guys had no choice but to rely on this state of cultivation to pass their days. One had to know that the idea of the 2 families was to stay here for a year, and the supplies they brought were also calculated according to a year's time. Even if one of them died and two left with Wang Sheng, coupled with the fact that they had dug more in the beginning, they would only have 3 or 4 months of supplies a year at most. It was easy to drink. There was ice and snow everywhere, and as long as they had spiritual energy, they could melt the ice and snow. They could also get a few big trees buried in ice and snow underground to keep warm and make a fire to boil water and cook. But where would they get food? Would they go hunting outside? It would be good if they weren't caught as prey by those monsters in this place. Would they dare to go out and hunt? Otherwise, why would they build a 2-story building to hide their aura? Wasn't it because the monsters were too fierce? Therefore, their food could only be brought in from outside. Even if they brought enough food, it was almost used up by now. Why did they just sit and cultivate? Because the amount of activity was not large, the consumption was minimal, and they could also get energy from the spiritual energy, allowing them to support a longer time. Every family had tried to enter the core area, but none of the experts could enter the inner circle without Wang Sheng's guidance. These 9 peak legendary experts were actually trapped in the inner circle, unable to advance or retreat. When he understood this point, Wang Sheng smiled. This was a very good business deal that could make the Sure family and the Gan family pay a sufficient price. At the side of the array that shared the passage, Wang Sheng casually used the line formula to activate the array, and then directly turned around and walked outside. Once the array was activated, it would definitely alarm the people inside. Wang Sheng didn't want to deal with them in the dark, so it was better to go outside. When Wang Sheng returned to the back of the giant bear, he nestled in its warm fur and waited for half an hour. Only then did Wang Sheng wait for the 2 families to come out. Each of them looked as if they were facing a formidable enemy. They met at the fork and discussed for a while before carefully coming out of the ice stairs. Wang Sheng felt a little amused when he felt their careful movements. It wasn't until they were safely out of the 2 doors that the 9 experts took turns to come out of the stone door and didn't get attacked, that he felt relieved. Then they saw Wang Sheng sitting on the shoulder of the giant bear and looking down at them with a smile. It seems that you haven't been living well for more than a year. Wang Sheng smiled and looked at the 9 experts. The 9 peak legendary experts were much thinner than the last time Wang Sheng saw them. Sure enough, it was just as Wang Sheng had predicted. Upon seeing that it was Wang Sheng, the 9 people were shocked at first, but then they simply relaxed. In particular, when they saw a pair of eyes on each side of Wang Sheng's shoulders, they knew that if Wang Sheng really wanted to attack them, he wouldn't need to get so close to them. He could just command the powerful beasts here to do it. If that was the case, what was there to guard against? The experts of the 2 families looked at each other and didn't speak. Wang Sheng didn't mind. He just bent down and smiled at the 9 people. Do you need any help? Chapter 962. The 9 of them looked at each other in dismay. Wang Sheng was looking at them with a smile. It was obvious that he had noticed something. Was he planning to keep a secret? Or was he planning to ask for Wang Sheng's help? Oh, right. Wang Sheng opened his mouth again. I forgot to remind you. Recently, there has been a big commotion outside. Everyone is on guard. Your 2 families might not be able to take care of you for the time being. Marquis, do you have a rough idea what's going on? A Sure family expert asked Wang Sheng sincerely. I'm sorry. Just when Wang Sheng said this, and the others thought that it was over, Wang Sheng said the second half of his sentence. I am no longer Marquis Changsheng, but Duke Changsheng. Wang Sheng had been promoted and made a fortune after these people entered the land of Thousand Despair. No one could enter the core area, and they lived underground for a long time. How could they know what had happened outside? Hearing this, everyone let out a long sigh of relief. They almost thought that they wouldn't be able to get any information from Wang Sheng. Duke, please tell us. The leader of the Gan family hurriedly changed his tone and respectfully asked Wang Sheng. This time, Wang Sheng didn't keep them in suspense. He told them the news that Baoqing Yutang had suddenly jumped out and became a big problem for all parties. He also mentioned that Baoqing Yutang had a flying mount. At the same time, he mentioned that the Chiu family and the Xia family had suffered great losses. Baoqing Yuhal had appeared out of nowhere and possessed flying mounts. At the same time, It was a powerful organization that could fly to the head of any country's monarch at any time. How could they care about the matters in the land of 1,000 extremities? They had no time to worry about it. Perhaps everyone thought that they were all at the peak of the legendary realm and could overcome any difficulties. Of course, Wang Sheng didn't forget to tell them that his body had been greatly damaged after leaving the core area of the Land of Thousand Despair. Therefore, he told them that he had been recuperating for a few months. This was to let them understand that other than Wang Sheng himself, no one else could enter this circle, so they gave up on the idea of waiting. This was the truth. Because Wang Sheng could not come in, the Shi family and the Gan family could not send in any supplies no matter how much they racked their brains and worried. They could only starve. They could only carefully calculate the amount of food they had and spend their days cultivating. The 9 of them were a little surprised, but at the same time, they seemed a little relieved. No wonder the supplies couldn't be delivered for such a long time. They were all stuck around Wang Sheng's neck. If it weren't for Wang Sheng's sudden appearance, they wouldn't even be able to see him. I won't hide it from you, Duke. Seeing the situation, the 9 of them already knew what was going on. Under such circumstances, it would be useless even if they restrained Wang Sheng. They would have to rely on Wang Sheng to go back and forth. If they had known this was going to happen, they wouldn't have come in last year. However, they had no choice but to lower their heads to Wang Sheng. Duke, do you have any extra food on you? Please share some with us. We can't last much longer. Seeing their attitude, Wang Sheng knew that they had seen the situation clearly. He didn't hold back any longer and tossed a small storage ring over. The storage ring was filled with food. There was demonic beast meat, rice, and some vegetables. It was enough for them to last for a while. The leader of the Gan family caught the storage ring and easily erased Wang Sheng's aura. He injected his own aura into the storage ring, and a smile instantly appeared on his face. Although the storage ring wasn't big and wasn't a top-notch storage ring like Wang Sheng's, the things inside were enough for them to use for a month or two. Wang Sheng was so generous, so they didn't dare to take it too far. The leader of the Gan family didn't say anything and directly tossed over a storage ring of a higher grade. However, it was completely empty. Even if there was anything inside, it had already been used up. However, the value of the storage ring alone had already far exceeded the value of the things that Wang Sheng had just given them by several times. You'll have to work hard for a while longer. I'll go in and take a look. Wang Sheng didn't stand on ceremony. He reached out and caught the storage ring. It'll take about a month. After I go out and ask the heads of your 2 families, I'll send you a batch of things. Thank you very much, Duke. The 2 families thanked Wang Sheng politely. Forget it. We'll talk about it when I return. Wang Sheng cupped his hands at the experts and patted the huge bear beneath him. The huge bear obediently raised its head and was about to turn and leave. In the blink of an eye, the 2 white snow mice lying on Wang Sheng's back entered everyone's eyes. Seeing that Wang Sheng actually dared to carry 2 live snow mice that weren't afraid of the huge bear on his back, everyone was shocked. Fortunately, they didn't have any ulterior motives in the beginning. Otherwise, who knew how many more demonic beasts were hiding in the surrounding snow? The scene of Wang Sheng casually calling out a huge bear from the snow when they first came in was still vivid in their minds. It had even forced them to kill an expert from the Shi family. At that time, there was only one huge bear. Now, they could see that it was much more powerful than before. Suddenly, the leader of the Shi family's heart skipped a beat. He called out to Wang Sheng, "Duke, may I ask, what are those on your back?" "These 2. This time, Wang Sheng didn't even pat the huge bear. However, the huge bear immediately turned around, allowing Wang Sheng to face everyone again. He stretched out his hands. Without any other movements, the 2 snow mice flew from his back to Wang Sheng's arms. They moved so fast that Wang Sheng's eyes only saw a flash of white light. "These are the 2 little pets I found when I came in this time." Wang Sheng introduced them with a smile. "They're fast and have a good nose. It's very easy to find something. Why are you interested?" A few experts didn't think much of it, but the 2 leaders of the Shi family and Gan family were already excited. When Wang Sheng said that these 2 snow mice were only fast and had a good nose, They believed him without a doubt. However, it was impossible for them to believe that the snow mice only had this little ability. However, it was enough as long as they had a good nose. Didn't Wang Sheng just say that it was very easy to find something? They had been digging around like headless flies. If they had something with a good nose, wouldn't it be a great help in finding treasures? We don't dare to have any ideas about Duke's pets. The leader of the Gan family immediately followed. He smiled at Wang Sheng and said, I just want to ask Duke if you can bring one or two of us out when you go out. We can let the people outside know what's going on inside. Sure. Wang Sheng didn't mind this seemingly presumptuous request at all. He generously agreed. However, I'll say this first. No matter who goes out, they have to follow my rules. Of course. The leader of the Gan family hurriedly agreed. Also, it's not free. Wang Sheng laughed again. Whether it's bringing people out or bringing supplies in, I'm afraid your families will have to spend a lot of money. You know that I'm poor and can't bear to see money. Chapter 963. Wang Sheng was poor. When the 9 people heard Wang Sheng say that he was poor, they all wanted to despise him from the bottom of their hearts. If Wang Sheng dared to say that he was poor, then how many rich people would there be in this world? He and Shinjuan Runzi Workshop could easily make hundreds of millions of gold coins a year. How could that be considered poor? Perhaps the 9 of them didn't know that he had opened a dream workshop later on. If they knew, they would definitely drown Wang Sheng with their saliva. However, the 9 of them understood Wang Sheng's money-grubbing temperament better than anyone else. If Wang Sheng didn't want any voluntary help, then it would be a huge problem. On the contrary, Wang Sheng didn't say anything and acted like he wanted money. This was the most reassuring thing. Everything is negotiable, Duke. The leader of the Gan clan agreed without hesitation. We don't have anything to give you here, but don't worry, Duke. After we leave, our 2 clans will definitely compensate you for this trip. All right. Wang Sheng had already set the bait, and the other party had taken the bait. Naturally, Wang Sheng didn't need to stay any longer and gave them time to discuss. Thus, he bid them farewell. Then I'll be leaving first. I'll have to trouble you to stay here for a while. I'll come back after I'm done. The giant bear turned around. It seemed to be moving very slowly, but it was actually moving very quickly. It didn't take long for it to detour around the ice city and disappear into the boundless white snow. The 2 leaders looked at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. Clearly, this wasn't the place to talk. The 2 of them said at the same time, let's go down and discuss. After saying that, they immediately realized the tacit understanding between them and laughed. After instructing 1 person from each clan to stand guard at the cave entrance, the few of them went down to the public resting area. After the 2 leaders sat down, the leader of the Gan clan asked, what do you think? They didn't have Wang Sheng's ability to identify obstacles in the dark. Thus, they had lit torches along the way. The wood here was easy to obtain, so there were plenty of materials to start a fire. Those 2 little demonic beasts should be able to help us find the peerless treasure. The leader of the Shur clan quickly gave his judgment. He did it on purpose. The Gan family's leader was thinking a lot. He carefully pondered over Wang Sheng's earlier actions, trying to figure out if this was Wang Sheng's scheme. Probably not. On this point, the leader of the Shur clan thought that he understood it better than the leader of the Gan clan. He said himself that he wanted to take a look inside. Do you believe that he went in for a walk? That was obviously impossible. No one would wander around the inner zone of the grounds of Thousand Despair for no reason. There must be something that they wanted. There were too many secrets in the grounds of Thousand Despair, so many that no one knew how many secrets there were. Perhaps in the eyes of the Shur clan and the Gan clan, the peerless hidden treasure might be an incredible treasure, but in the eyes of Wang Sheng, it might not be anything at all. From their experience of dealing with Wang Sheng, they knew that Wang Sheng was a man of his word. He would never discount what he had promised. But if someone challenged him midway, he didn't mind fighting back. The death of the Shur clan's legendary pinnacle expert was proof of that. Wang Sheng didn't even make a move and forced the Shur clan to kill their comrade. If one were to say that he was ruthless, then he was definitely ruthless. It was also this ruthlessness that made everyone admire him, especially after something like this had happened. Wang Sheng could have torn up the agreement between the two parties and kicked them out to fight alone. He could even have killed all of them in the grounds of Thousand Despair. After all, it was indeed the Shi clan who provoked Wang Sheng first. However, even after Wang Sheng had forced them to kill that fellow, he still carried out his end of the bargain. That was a rare sight. If he really wanted to find a partner, it would be more reassuring to find such a person. He had principles, did not break his promise, and at the same time had the ability to deal with breaking his promise. Other than asking a high price, there were no other disadvantages. But asking a high price wasn't completely a disadvantage. It was indeed expensive, but it was definitely worth it. On this point, no one who had cooperated with Wang Sheng dared to disagree. If they could really borrow Wang Sheng's 2 snow mice, they might be able to find the peerless treasure that they had been digging underground for more than a year. But the problem was, what kind of price would they have to pay? This was what the two of them had a headache about and needed to discuss. Of course, there was another problem. Even if the two of them reached an agreement, they couldn't make the final decision without the consent of the family outside. This was also the reason why they had to bring one person out. This person had to contact the family outside. Regardless of whether it was successful or not, they just had to bring their intentions out and let the family decide. At least for this trip, Wang Sheng gave them a batch of food that could last them for a month or two. If Wang Sheng didn't come, they would probably only be able to live frugally for more than a month. After that, they would have to risk their lives to go hunting. Not to mention the casualties, they might even trigger a more terrifying reaction in the circle once they released their aura. Wang Sheng had come at the right time. Once again, he pulled them back from helpless despair. Not only did he give them hope of survival, but he also gave them the hope of finding the peerless treasure. In any case, they had to explain these things to the family head and win over Wang Sheng, the only person who could go in and out of the inner circle. At this moment, Wang Sheng didn't care about the results of the discussion between the two families. The bait had been thrown, and it seemed that the fish had taken the bait. All that was left was to sit on the fishing platform and wait for them to take the initiative. There was no need to worry. During this time, Wang Sheng could also think about what kind of method to use and how to deal with it. With the giant bear as a mount, Wang Sheng walked very smoothly in the inner circle. Now Wang Sheng didn't dare to cultivate when he had nothing to do. He was afraid that he would fall into the state of only knowing how to cultivate and be unable to extricate himself. Even an expert like the old Taoist Ling, Su had the experience of being unable to break through his closed-door cultivation and almost falling into it. If Wang Sheng hadn't mastered the Buddhist incantation of 9 words and awakened him in time, the old Taoist might have died. If something happened to Wang Sheng while he was immersed in cultivation, who would save Wang Sheng? Even if the old Taoist wanted to save him, he had to be able to find him. Who knew if he would be buried in the snow and turned into a popsicle one day? Now that he thought about it, it was really a joke for the Shi and Gone families to covet the peerless treasure. They were given more than a year to prepare, but when they arrived at the destination, they were still empty-handed. They even left 9 experts at the peak of the legendary realm in vain. This hidden treasure was really not something that ordinary people could covet. With this lesson in mind, Wang Sheng only cultivated twice a day, once at midnight and once at noon, which was the most standard. Even so, Wang Sheng's cultivation speed was already more than 10 times faster than outside the ground of despair. The back half of the Bawei's body had completely solidified, and even more than half of its chest had solidified. Chapter 964. Wang Sheng wasn't sure if there were any flying demonic beasts in the core area. But now that Wang Sheng had a guide, even if he didn't know where it was, he could still ask around. It wasn't that there were people in the ground of despair. The guide was actually the 2 snow rats on his back. Previously, when Wang Sheng was investigating the scene of Baoqing Yutang's disappearance in the capital, Wang Sheng had tried asking ants to look for things that didn't belong to the area. A few ants had voluntarily found the fur of a flying mount for him. It was the same now. All Wang Sheng had to do was ask the giant bear and the 2 snow rats to know if there were any flying demonic beasts. With the size of the white bear, it was a top-notch predator. It didn't care if there were any flying demonic beasts. So no matter how Wang Sheng tried to use the five-word formula to get it to express itself, the giant bear was indifferent. Left with no other choice, Wang Sheng could only ask the two snow rats. The same question, the same method, but the two snow rats' reactions were completely different. Almost as soon as Wang Sheng asked, the two snow rats started jumping and squealing on Wang Sheng's shoulder. It did not take long for Wang Sheng to understand what they were trying to express. It was simple. They were flying demonic beasts. In the inner core area of the ground of despair, the white bear could ignore the flying demonic beasts, but the snow rats were different. Their size and freshness made them destined to be the prey of the flying demonic beasts. On the other hand, the giant bear, which wasn't very fast, couldn't catch up with them at all, so they didn't care at all. This was an unexpected surprise. Although Wang Sheng wouldn't be able to find out the exact location of the nest of flying demonic beasts, no matter how many times he asked, Wang Sheng could at least confirm that there were indeed flying demonic beasts in the inner circle of the grounds of Thousand Despair. Moreover, they were extremely powerful flying demonic beasts. Knowing that there were was enough. How big could the inner core area be? With Wang Sheng's current battle awareness, he could sense a radius of 5 miles. A few more rounds, and he would be able to find out where it was. If they were to conduct a carpet search, the bear's speed would not be fast enough. Wang Sheng decided to let the bear go so that it could find its own food. It was impossible for Wang Sheng to bring enough food for the giant bear. After assembling the sleigh, Wang Sheng carried the two snow rats on his back and started to wander around the inner core area of the ground of despair. As he wandered, Wang Sheng perfected the map of the inner core area. At the same time, he was also searching for the situation of the surrounding demonic beasts. Fortunately, Wang Sheng still remembered the words of the old Taoist Ling Su. He didn't dare to rush directly into the inner core area. He just drove the sleigh and circled around the inner core area where the treasures were hidden, so he could figure out what was going on in the outer core area first. It took him more than a day to go around. Wang Sheng couldn't help but be shocked. The inner core area was really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Any random demonic beast was enough to make people tremble in fear. Fortunately, Wang Sheng's current 5-word formula was enough to eliminate the hostility of various demonic beasts. Otherwise, if it were the 9 experts from the Sure and Gone families, even if they couldn't beat 1 or 2 demonic beasts, they would definitely be exhausted to death with so many demonic beasts. There was one thing that Wang Sheng found strange. No matter how ferocious the demonic beasts were or how violent their auras were, they wouldn't trigger the auras of those super demonic beasts. However, as long as it was the aura of a human expert at the peak of a legendary realm, it would definitely trigger the super demonic beasts. Wang Sheng didn't know why. After wandering around the outer core area for more than a day and resting for half a day, Wang Sheng continued to walk inside. After walking for only 5 miles, Wang Sheng's expression changed. Although it was just a short distance, the demonic beasts inside were at least 50% more ferocious. That was to say, Wang Sheng could make the demonic beasts not be hostile. Otherwise, the aura alone would be enough to make Wang Sheng retreat. As for the 2 snow rats, they were completely lying on Wang Sheng's back and didn't dare to move. The demonic beasts were also smart. They knew that Wang Sheng's back was the safest place. Therefore, they didn't make any moves and were as obedient as Wang Sheng's pets. In this area, even the little person with combat awareness began to react. It wasn't that he had discovered something, but he had a strong desire to explore deeper. Fortunately, Wang Sheng knew what was good for him. He forcefully controlled himself and still walked in the inner circle, not daring to take a step inside. On the way, Wang Sheng found a few icebergs, which were bigger than what they looked like from the outside. However, Wang Sheng also felt the vague aura of the super demonic beasts in the icebergs. Needless to say, this was still a formation that sealed the super demonic beasts in ice. The temperature also seemed to be getting colder. Wang Sheng needed to use twice the amount of lime every day to keep himself warm. Otherwise, he would have to use up his spiritual energy. He didn't dare to walk at full speed. After walking half a circle, Wang Sheng finally found a flying demonic beast within his sensing range. With the help of the little person with combat awareness, Wang Sheng continuously released the 5-word formula. Only then did he not become the prey of the flying demonic beast that was flying high up in the sky. Fortunately, the demonic beast was flying low. Otherwise, Wang Sheng really wouldn't have noticed it. He vaguely tracked the flying demonic beast. With the speed of the sled, he was finally able to catch up with the tail of the flying demonic beast. After walking in circles for about an hour, Wang Sheng finally caught up with the nest of the flying demonic beast. He could only rely on his eyes to track it. Otherwise, he would have lost it long ago. At least half of the time, the huge flying demonic beast that looked like a huge eagle was flying in the inner circle. At this time, Wang Sheng could only wait for it to fly back. Finally, after much persuasion, they found the nest of the eagle. It was not surprising. The nest of the huge eagle was actually on the top of an iceberg. Moreover, it was on the top of the iceberg where the super demonic beast was sealed. This was in line with the habits of the eagle, which liked to nest on high mountains. At last, he found the nest. Wang Sheng let out a long breath. Then, he drove the sled out without looking back. This area gave him too much pressure. He was relying on the powerful combat awareness and the little person. Otherwise, even the 5-word formula might not be able to withstand it. He would definitely be torn to pieces by these demonic beasts. Even Wang Sheng felt this way. It could be imagined how desperate the other experts would be when they came in. This made Wang Sheng even happier. This also meant that if the clans wanted to explore the secrets of the core of the Ground of Despair, they would still have to look for Wang Sheng. Only with Wang Sheng leading the way could they enter. Otherwise, they would die. In this area, Wang Sheng didn't even dare to cultivate. After rushing out, he did not stop. He rushed all the way to the outer circle of the core. After going around in circles, he completely completed the map that he didn't complete the last time he came in. Then, he entered the inner circle to cultivate for 7 to 8 days. Adding up to more than 10 days, he felt that the Shur and Gon families were waiting anxiously. Then, he found the huge bear again. Then, he controlled the huge bear and rushed to Ice City. Chapter 965. He had already seen his target, but Wang Sheng chose to leave decisively. It wasn't because Wang Sheng was afraid of death, but because he had weighed the pros and cons. It was said that fortune came from danger. Wang Sheng had read many novels on Earth. In similar situations, the protagonist would definitely take the risk to enter and obtain countless benefits. Of course, that was the treatment of the protagonist. He could only achieve it by relying on his heaven-defying luck and boundless fortune. However, Wang Sheng had never felt that he deserved the treatment of the protagonist. Everything he had experienced told him that the success of achieving his goal depended on his daily training, mastery of various skills, scouting ahead of time, careful planning, and resolute execution. When it really depended on luck, he was actually not far from failure. Wang Sheng was a typical person who believed that his fate was in his own hands. He firmly believed that everything was under his control and not the god of fate. It was the same even after coming to this world. He had never seen himself as a savior. This was not some foreign country, but another world. Other than being extremely careful and taking one step at a time, Wang Sheng had no other choice but to be very careful and move forward step by step. If he really had to sacrifice his life, Wang Sheng would not be stingy. However, if he died because of carelessness, Wang Sheng would not be willing to accept it. After coming to this world, Wang Sheng had yet to see the girl of his dreams. Wang Sheng would not let himself die so easily no matter what. The Shur clan and the Gon clan had been waiting anxiously. They had never felt that half a month's time was so long, and their hearts were burning with impatience. The heavens had finally opened their eyes. The people stationed at the observation holes in Bingcheng, who were keeping an eye on the surroundings, noticed Wang Sheng slowly making his way over on the giant bear. Immediately, the people inside the observation holes cheered in low voices. Before Wang Sheng called for them, the two leaders of the Shur and Gon families had already taken the initiative to welcome him, even though they were about to be buried in the snow. Have you thought about it? What's your plan? Wang Sheng was still sitting on the head of the giant bear. He looked down at the crowd and did not stand on ceremony. "The two of us will go with you, Duke." The two leaders had already discussed everything and communicated with their team members, so they didn't hide anything and directly said, "We are responsible for convincing the head of our family. When the time comes, we will have to trouble the Duke to send us in again." Wang Sheng looked at the remaining people. The remaining 7 people nodded silently and did not express any objections. "Leave all your supplies behind." Wang Sheng didn't waste any more time talking to them. He directly ordered, "I still have some on the way. It's enough for you to use." Of course, the two of them were happy to leave more supplies for their own people. In fact, even without Wang Sheng's suggestion, they had already planned to do so. "Find a wide wooden board immediately. 2 will do too." Wang Sheng gestured. "The bigger the better. Heat the front of the wooden board with fire and bend it." Hearing Wang Sheng's order, the crowd was confused. However, they did not object. Immediately, 2 people rushed into the ice cave. There were large trees on the frozen ground. They had dug them up to start a fire, so it was easy to make 2 wooden boards. They had followed Wang Sheng into the land of thousand despair and knew Wang Sheng's rules. Usually, Wang Sheng would only tell you what to do. He would never explain why. However, Wang Sheng's orders were always correct. This was the experience Wang Sheng had gained from surviving in the land of thousand despair. It was also the experience he had gained from sacrificing dozens of lives. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they would know to listen obediently. It didn't take long for the wooden boards to be completed. They were very wide. Each board was more than 3 feet wide and 6 feet long. According to Wang Sheng's requirements, the front was tilted up. Wang Sheng looked at the wooden boards and nodded. He had them nail the 2 wooden boards side by side and make a few holes in the tilted part. Then, Wang Sheng took out a long rope from his storage ring and had them tie the holes. After that, he handed the rope to Wang Sheng. Seeing Wang Sheng tie the rope to the giant bear's tail, everyone had a rough idea of what Wang Sheng wanted these 2 wooden boards for. "You don't have to trudge through the snow if you sit on it." Wang Sheng pointed at the 2 wooden boards nailed together and said to the 2 leaders, "It's big enough for you to sit on it. I can guarantee that there will be no attacks from demonic beasts, but I can't help you resist the cold wind. So, try to wear more clothes. If there are tents, use them. Also, use more fur to keep you warm." With such a large wooden board tilted up at the front, wasn't this a large ski board? With such a large area, 2 people sitting on it wouldn't sink into the snow. Being pulled by the giant bear would definitely be much easier than trudging on their own. Most importantly, it would also be a lot faster. Who wouldn't be willing to save trouble and effort? No one dared to criticize why Wang Sheng didn't let the 2 of them sit on the back of the giant bear. To be honest, even if Wang Sheng invited them, they might not dare to go up. While Wang Sheng was guarding against them, weren't they also guarding against Wang Sheng? It was just that in the current situation, apart from Wang Sheng, they really couldn't find anyone who could help them, so they could only do this. Understanding Wang Sheng's intention, someone immediately went down and brought 2 wooden chairs up and nailed them to the wooden boards. In such a cold day, sitting directly on the snow-covered wooden boards naturally couldn't compare to having more chairs. They covered it with fur and used the small tents that each of them brought before to encircle them. This way, they could protect them from the wind. A simple wooden ski board with its own tent was completely completed. Wang Sheng looked at all this coldly. He slightly calculated the food he brought with him and decisively left a batch of food that the 3 of them couldn't use on the return journey. Since he wanted to do a favor, he might as well do it more. Just some food could be exchanged for thousands of times the gratitude of the 2 families. Why not? The people who stayed behind were also surprised and happy. With the food that Wang Sheng left behind, even if they didn't eat until they were 60% full, they could still last for half a year. They believed that their respective families outside wouldn't let them wait for half a year. Finally, they wouldn't be so hungry. "Let's go." Seeing that everything was ready, Wang Sheng let the 2 leaders sit on the ski board. He controlled the giant bear and pulled the ski board, starting to walk out. The 7 people who stayed behind watched reluctantly as the shadow of the giant bear disappeared. Only then did they happily return to the warm underground tunnel. This time, there was finally something to look forward to. After walking for more than 10 miles, Wang Sheng suddenly said to the two people on the back of the giant bear, "Oh right, there's something I need to tell you in advance so that you don't misunderstand." Chapter 966. Please advise us, Duke. The two leaders of the Gan and Sher family were extremely respectful to Wang Sheng. What a joke. How could they not be respectful? Now, they were following behind a giant bear. Wang Sheng had two snow rats with him. Who knew how many more monsters were hiding in the snow? To put it bluntly, if Wang Sheng wanted to kill them, they really couldn't do anything. You also know that the concentration of spiritual energy inside is many times higher than outside. Wang Sheng wasn't trying to trick them. He really wanted to give them some pointers. Some things had to be explained in advance, lest they think they were being plotted against. Indeed, after living here for more than a year, how could the two not know that the concentration of spiritual energy inside was high? During this period of time, they were almost addicted to cultivating, or rather, they were already addicted to it. If they dared to say they didn't know, they were definitely looking for trouble. It might be a little better from the outside. Because the concentration of spiritual energy has increased, you will feel more comfortable, and your cultivation will become smoother. Wang Sheng continued. However, from the inside to the outside, because the concentration of spiritual energy has decreased greatly, you will feel uncomfortable after you go out. Thank you for the reminder, Duke. The two were already mentally prepared for this. They would definitely feel uncomfortable, but if it was just a little discomfort, it wouldn't be a big deal. I'm talking about the most ideal situation. Wang Sheng sighed. The two leaders were thinking too simply. Unless they could have the cultivation level of the old Taoist, they would definitely not be able to escape a serious illness. Every time I come in, I will be weak for a period of time after I go out. Wang Sheng didn't care what the two thought. He just said what he wanted to say. It's not just me. Before you came in, you should also know that those who came in for the first time and came out alive actually all became seriously ill. Oh, of course, the two remembered. Only now did they remember what Wang Sheng was warning them about. Your cultivation is very high, but I don't think you can escape this. Actually, the higher one's cultivation, the greater the impact. Wang Sheng's words were very clear. He did not want them to misunderstand. Therefore, after you leave the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair, you might feel weak very quickly. It would not be surprising if your body suddenly collapses. After all, you have stayed here for too long. The two of them looked at each other, not daring to say anything. They were afraid that Wang Sheng might have other ideas. I'm just reminding you. Wang Sheng continued to speak unhurriedly. Once something like that happens, don't misunderstand me for plotting against you. At best, I'm in a slightly better state than you guys. Why get back? I'll have to take good care of myself. If you have any nourishing pills, eat one if you feel something is wrong. Don't force yourself. Thank you for your guidance, Duke. The two finally understood that Wang Sheng was giving them a heads up in advance so that they wouldn't have to worry. If Wang Sheng really wanted to harm them, there was no need to say anything. He just needed to quietly wait for them to become weak. On the other hand, by saying it out loud, Wang Sheng would appear honorable and open, as if he had never considered doing such a thing. I'll be responsible for sending you to your respective camps in the grounds of Thousand Despair. Wang Sheng ignored the two's thanks and continued. I'll give you 2 months to discuss with your respective kings. At that time, I'll be waiting for you at the Imperial Treasury's camp. If there's any result, come and inform me. If no one notifies me, I'll pretend that this never happened. 2 months was enough for their people to travel back and forth to their respective countries and discuss things. In any case, during these 2 months, Wang Sheng would not leave the grounds of Thousand Despair. Let Baoqing Yutang and the people from various countries fight outside. Duke, may I take the liberty to ask if we can talk in the bases of our two families? The leader of the Sher family was very quick-witted. He immediately realized that something was wrong and hurriedly asked. If they really went to the Imperial Treasury's camp, wouldn't the cooperation between the two families and Wang Sheng be exposed? Would the other families allow them to eat alone? Therefore, they must not talk in the Imperial Treasury's camp. What was the difference between that and announcing it to the world? It doesn't matter to me, as long as the important figures of your two families dare to come and you don't guard against each other. Wang Sheng casually agreed. He mentioned the Imperial Treasury's camp because the important figures of the two families should not be afraid of this camp. If they had their own ideas, Wang Sheng didn't care. The two breathed a sigh of relief and were about to speak when Wang Sheng said, "In that case, let's go to the Gan family. Is there a problem? Was there a problem? Even if there were two people, they wouldn't dare to mention it. What's more, how could there be a problem with the Gan family's leader? If there was a problem, it should be the Sure family's people. A three-person team, 2 against 1. What would the final result be? If they wanted to blame someone, they could only blame the Sure family for offending Wang Sheng, who asked the Sure family to have disagreements with Wang Sheng from the beginning. Later, in the core of the Place of Despair, there were people who challenged Wang Sheng's authority. From this point of view, the leader of the Sure family could definitely secretly cover the quilt and cry, while the leader of the Gan family could cover his mouth and snicker. No problem. The two leaders replied in unison. However, the Sure family's leader promised with a sad face, while the Gan family's leader was smiling. The giant bear walked very fast. There were no demon beasts along the way, and it did not sink into the snow. One step of the huge bear was equivalent to 20 steps of a human. Compared to the speed when they came in, the difference was like heaven and earth. Just after the three of them talked for a while, they had already walked more than 10 miles. Wang Sheng was very clear, but the brains of the two leaders had not stopped. They were thinking about Wang Sheng's words and did not notice it at all. Wang Sheng did not say anything. He was sincere. He just wanted to see how the two people who had stayed in the core of the Place of Despair for more than a year rushed to the periphery of the Place of Despair. He wanted to see how the change in the spiritual energy would affect them. Wang Sheng had only been here for a short time, and he was very careful, so the effect was not obvious enough. It was better to observe the two carefully. No matter how much he pondered, there would be times when the speed was too fast. By the time the two of them realized it, the giant bear had already walked more than 10 miles, leaving the inner circle of the core. This was the power of the 5-word formula. Until now, the giant bear had not lost control, and the two snow mice were obediently climbing on Wang Sheng's back, like obedient pets. When they arrived here, the two of them actually felt a little uncomfortable. Coming out of the core, the concentration of spiritual energy had decreased, just like coming out of a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Although it was just the beginning, Wang Sheng was sure that there would definitely be decompression sickness. However, the two of them already had Wang Sheng's reminder, so they did not feel anything strange. Instead, they were very excited, especially when they could see the forest at the edge of the glacier basin before the sky turned dark. The two of them finally breathed a sigh of relief. They were out. Chapter 9:67. For the time being, the two experts were still behaving normally in the glacier basin. They were a little uncomfortable, but not to the point where they were weak. It didn't take long for Wang Sheng to reach the edge of the glacier basin on the back of the giant bear. Here, the giant bear was basically useless. It would be difficult for it to move in the forest with its huge size. After taking off the skis, Wang Sheng used the mantra of 9 secret words to comb the body of the giant bear. Then, he patted the giant bear's big paws to let it turn around. The two snow rats were still on Wang Sheng's back. They were the bait that Wang Sheng used to catch the two families, so he couldn't let them go easily. With these two snow rats, the Sure and Gan families would try to cooperate with Wang Sheng. Then, Wang Sheng would have enough time to consider how to cooperate with them. Are we going to rest here for the night, or continue our journey? Wang Sheng asked the two experts in the forest at the edge of the glacier basin. Here, the two experts who were at the peak of the legendary realm and had been cultivating in the core circle of the Place of Thousand Despair for more than a year, were basically not afraid of almost any demonic beasts. If they were familiar with the road, they could sweep through the entire place. However, the two of them kept Wang Sheng's reminder in mind. If they were to get carried away and become weak and unable to move after going out, Wouldn't it be unjust for them to be eaten by a few small bugs? Let's rest here for the night. The two of them said in unison. Wang Xing didn't care. He made a small tent on the spot, drove away the surrounding bugs, ate and drank, and slept. These days, Wang Sheng had slept enough, so he didn't have any worries. Soon, he fell asleep. The two experts couldn't sleep, so they could only use cultivation to pass the time. Finally, the three of them set off again at daybreak. However, as soon as they walked out of the coarse circle of the place of thousand despair, they were shocked. Man-eating ants. At first, there were only a few dozen of them. It didn't take long for them to grow to tens of thousands. Less than an hour after Wang Sheng led them through the forest, they had become an overwhelming black mass that stretched as far as the eye could see. Even though both of them were experts at the peak of the legendary realm and had been cultivating in the core circle of the place of thousand despair for more than a year, they were still scared out of their wits when they faced the endless swarm of man-eating ants. Don't worry, it's just my scavengers. Wang Xing comforted them as he walked. They're very obedient and won't bite. It would be weird if I believed you. The two team leaders followed Wang Sheng with trepidation. Even when they were walking, they were extremely careful. They were afraid that they would accidentally step on a single man-eating ant and be devoured by a large group of them. Fortunately, the man-eating ants were really special. They would always leave an empty space for the two of them to rest, so they didn't dare to walk too scared. Can you imagine the fear of having hundreds of millions of man-eating ants that could tear you into pieces and swallow you within a minute walking around you like flowing water? The two team leaders of the Sher family and the Gan family were now experiencing this extraordinary feeling. If it was in the past, they would have felt close to the sound of flowing water when the man-eating ants moved, because a place with water meant that they could rest. But now, there was only boundless fear and nothing else. This was a completely different fear from the core circle. In the core circle, they knew that Wang Sheng could control powerful monsters, but they were also confident that they could fight against the monsters. Even if they were defeated in the end, the monsters would have to pay a sufficient price. But now, they were truly in despair. They could easily kill many man-eating ants, and it wouldn't be strange even if there were thousands of them. But for such a large group of man-eating ants, it wouldn't affect them at all. But the man-eating ants could tear them into the tiniest pieces in a minute. That was the difference. Along the way with Wang Sheng, they were so nervous that they didn't even dare to sweat. It could be said that they had witnessed Wang Sheng's tyranny in the land of 1,000 despair. There was no reason, no warning, not even any funeral arrangements, because from the beginning to the end, they could not see any enemies or demonic beasts. Wherever the man-eating ants went, there was only silence. Even if there were any, they had already been cleaned up. What if there are people in front of us? After finally getting used to it a little, the Gan family team leader carefully put on a smile and pretended to ask casually, "Why aren't you running after seeing such a huge commotion?" Wang Sheng smiled and replied, "If you really think you have the guts, then feed them to the man-eating ants. Anyway, these little things need to find food." Wang Sheng said it casually, as if he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. The two team leaders from the Gan family and Sher family thought about it and felt that it made sense. Instead of running after seeing such a huge commotion, they insisted on acting like they had the guts. They deserved to be fed to the ants. In any case, the two of them had already made up their minds. In the future, no matter what the situation was, they would never fight with Wang Sheng face to face. Even though Wang Sheng's cultivation was nothing in their eyes, Wang Sheng's killing methods were something that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. If they could befriend such a person, they would. Even if they couldn't be enemies. After walking for a short while, the two experts realized that something was wrong. It was as if all the energy in their bodies had been sucked out in an instant. As they walked, their vision became blurry and they lost all strength in their limbs. They could only see Wang Sheng's figure becoming more and more blurry. They wanted to take a step forward, but they could no longer do so. Eventually, they collapsed weakly. Both of them were experts, so they didn't lose consciousness. However, they just didn't have any strength left. When Wang Sheng heard their movements, He turned his head and looked at them. Once again, he confirmed something in his heart. A wave of energy seemed to have entered their bodies from the outside, and the two experts felt a little more strength returning. After that, they felt as if someone had stuffed an elixir into their mouths. The elixir melted the moment it entered their mouths, turning into a wave of energy that filled every part of their bodies. All sorts of sensations returned to their bodies. At the very least, they knew what had happened. You guys owe me 2 more elixirs. When Wang Sheng's words entered their ears, they felt at ease. It was an indescribable feeling. We stayed in there for too long. This is what happens when we suddenly come out. There's nothing we can do about it. Go back and take care of it. Wang Sheng said to the two. He had already said this when they were in there. Now, it was just to give them a deeper impression. How do I get you guys back? Seeing that Wang Sheng was rubbing his chin and pondering, Wang Sheng made his decision before the two of them could say anything. In the next scene, the 2 experts from the Shi clan and Gan clan nearly fainted from fear. Countless man-eating ants suddenly rushed to their bodies and wrapped them up tightly. Chapter 968. How would it feel to be covered by man-eating ants all over one's body, including the outside of one's eyes and nostrils? Their exposed skin could feel the numbing and itchy feeling of the ants crawling over them, and they could even smell the slightly earthy smell of the ants through their nostrils. The sensitivity of the experts at the peak of the legendary realm allowed them to feel the movement of every man-eating ant on their bodies at any time and place. Just this alone almost made the 2 leaders of the Gan and Xia family collapse. Fortunately, they still maintained their dignity as super experts and did not pass out immediately. Even so, the 2 of them seemed to have begun to itch all over their bodies, and they wished that they could grow 6 hands and keep scratching. However, the extreme fear made them not even dare to move, for fear that they would be bitten by the big teeth of the man-eating ants. As for opening their mouths, they did not even dare to think about it. They wished that they could not open their mouths for the rest of their lives. Who knew if a few man-eating ants would crawl into their mouths and cut them open from the inside out? Wang Sheng seemed to feel their nervousness and fear. He stood not far away from them and smiled at them. Don't be nervous, don't worry. How could they not be worried and nervous? At this moment, the 2 of them really wanted to scold Wang Sheng, but they did not dare to do so. They could only think about it in their hearts. Don't be afraid that they can't carry you. Wang Sheng's words once again reached their ears, as if he was speaking in their ears. It was so clear. Ants are one of the few super strong creatures that I know so far. They can carry things that are hundreds of times their own weight. A few dozen of you are more than enough. The 2 of them wanted to cry, but had no tears. Who said that we were worried that these man-eating ants could not carry us? Duke Changsheng, do you have a point in your consideration? Wang Sheng did not care about what the 2 of them were thinking. With so many man-eating ants around, how could they let Wang Sheng carry them? Wouldn't that be a fool? When the 2 of them began to move along with the swarm of man-eating ants, the 2 of them once again felt the fear of being moved by different man-eating ants. It was completely different from the pain of having the man-eating ants crawling on their bodies. It was like their souls had left their bodies. Don't say that I'm heartless. As Wang Sheng walked, he said, You're so weak that you can't even stand up. This is normal. You've been in there for more than a year, so you've gotten used to the spiritual energy pressure. You'll definitely feel uncomfortable when you return to a normal place. It's the same for me. It's just that my cultivation is low, and I've only been inside for a short period of time. That's why I'm better off than you guys and can still walk. Listening to Wang Sheng's explanation, the 2 of them could understand, but they could not accept such behavior. However, whether they could accept it or not was their subjective opinion. But the truth was that they had to accept it. Both will weaken, so I have to rely on these little things to protect myself. Wang Sheng's voice continued. At the same time, it is to protect you. Think about it. The 3 of us are so weak that we can't even display half of our usual battle strength. If we don't have the protection of these little fellows, what kind of ending would we be in the land of thousand despair? The man-eating ants covering their heads suddenly disappeared without a trace, allowing the 2 of them to see their own situation. At the same time, they also saw Wang Sheng's situation. The two of them were surrounded by countless man-eating ants and were carried on the ground. Wang Sheng was in a slightly better state than them, just maintaining a sitting posture. However, he was sitting on a chair that was formed by countless man-eating ants hugging together. Below them, under the man-eating ant chair that Wang Sheng was sitting on, countless black man-eating ants were constantly moving around, carrying the three of them away as if they were carrying food. Seeing that Wang Sheng was also sitting still, allowing the man-eating ants to carry him away, the two of them finally felt a little more balanced in their hearts. It turned out that Wang Sheng had also weakened to such an extent. If the two of them, who were experts at the peak of the legendary realm, could not compare to Wang Sheng, who was only at the 6th or 7th stage, wouldn't it be too embarrassing? Now it seemed that it was still okay. At least Wang Sheng was also extremely weak, so they felt a little balanced. You have to pray that these little things move faster, so that they can reach your camp before I can hold on. Wang Sheng seemed to be sincere in not letting them have an easy time, and the words that damaged their morale came again. Otherwise, these little things can't be controlled. There was no need for Wang Sheng to say anything else. Just thinking about it was enough to make the two of them shudder. If the two of them, who were supposed to be all-powerful in all kinds of battles, ended up dying in the stomachs of ants, then the two of them would not be willing to accept it. Wang Sheng had been observing the changes in the bodies of the two of them. The current situation, this kind of weakness, was very consistent with the symptoms of decompression sickness. However, Wang Sheng still had to ask to be sure. "We have nothing to do on the road. How do you feel now?" Wang Sheng asked. "When I am weak, my hands and feet are sore, very similar to the fatigue after a battle. Sometimes I can't see clearly, my ears are also affected, and I feel dizzy. I always need to rest for a while to recover. How about you?" "Same, it hurts a lot." The man from the Gone family probably thought that it was Wang Sheng's way to maintain his condition. He added, "I can't see clearly even now, and my ears are ringing badly. I'm not much better." The leader of the Sure family didn't hide anything since the man from the Gone family had already said it. Besides, everybody's symptoms were similar. "My whole body hurts, itches, and feels very hot. I can't see clearly, and it's disgusting." He was holding it back, and the willpower of a legendary expert prevented him from throwing up. If it were anyone else, they would have vomited already. Wang Sheng had only described some common symptoms of decompression sickness, but it led the two of them to say that their condition was exactly the same as that of diving. Wang Sheng had undergone diving training, and he knew very well about decompression sickness. This time it all made sense. Going from a place with a high concentration of spiritual energy to a place with a low concentration of spiritual energy was the same as diving to the surface. They would get decompression sickness with similar symptoms. "Don't try to be brave when you're there," Wang Sheng advised. "Find a doctor for treatment. You'll die if you're late. You've been in there for too long, and your condition is much worse than mine." The two of them became solemn. Since Wang Sheng spoke so seriously, he couldn't be joking. For the sake of their own lives, they had to find a doctor as soon as possible. Besides, they were carrying the hopes of two families, as well as the treasures. After walking in silence for 4 hours, the man-eating ants finally arrived at the Sure family's base, which was closest to them, under Wang Sheng's control. When the Black Flood arrived, everybody in the Sure family's base went crazy. Chapter 969. The man-eating ant army was now Wang Sheng's symbol in the ground of despair. Everyone knew that Wang Sheng had come when they saw the man-eating ant army. However, what was Wang Sheng doing at the Sure family's base? Hadn't he entered the core of the ground of despair some time ago? It had only been a month. Why did he suddenly come out? If the man-eating ant army had circled around the Sure family's base, it would not have been a big deal. Didn't Wang Sheng lead the man-eating ant army to wipe out the base some time ago? However, he basically circled around the various bases he passed by. The problem was once the man-eating ants arrived at the Sure family's base, they did not leave. They surrounded the entire base along the outer wall. The sound of running water scared many of the timid juniors in the base out of their wits. What was Wang Sheng trying to do? The manager of the Shi family's base could be considered an elder. He was used to such a big scene. If Wang Sheng was here, he would definitely question Wang Sheng. Even if there was a fight, he would command his juniors to fight against the man-eating ants. Even if he died, he would make sure that the man-eating ants suffered heavy losses. The problem was that the man-eating ants only surrounded the base and did not do anything. They could not tell Wang Sheng's attitude. If someone dared to provoke him now, it would be a disaster. Under the elder's restraint, everyone could only stand guard on the outer wall in fear. They did not dare to do anything to those little man-eating ants. Just like the two experts in the colony, they could only keep their complaints to themselves, even if they had an ocean of them. The Shi family elder heaved a sigh of relief when he finally saw Wang Sheng's figure on the walls of the base. Since Wang Sheng was willing to come out and meet them, there was still room for negotiation. At least, they would not fall out immediately. Duke Changsheng, what is the meaning of this? Seeing that Wang Sheng was still some distance away, Elder Shi did not care about anything else. He used all his strength and shouted at Wang Sheng from afar. The Shi family had once offended Wang Sheng. This was something that Elder Shi was well aware of. Could it be that Wang Sheng was coming for revenge? That was possible. Old Shi, your family is getting anxious. Wang Sheng did not answer Elder Shi's question right away. Instead, he teased the leader of the Shi clan. By now, the leader of the Shi family was on the verge of collapsing due to fear and weakness. He had no energy left to argue with Wang Sheng. He forced a smile on his face and disappeared immediately, unable to say a word. After Elder Shi asked this question, his heart was also anxious. Seeing that Wang Sheng didn't say a word and just slowly approached, he couldn't help but feel nervous. He hurriedly made a gesture to the people behind him, telling them to get ready. When Wang Sheng got closer, everyone realized that Wang Sheng hadn't walked over. Instead, he had slid over in a seated position. He glided over from a large number of man-eating ants. Even the chair he was sitting on was made of man-eating ants. Seeing this scene, everyone gasped. What kind of monster was he to be able to control man-eating ants to such an extent? Could they really win against such a monster? Finally, Wang Sheng glided to the gate of the base. The man-eating ants at the gate clattered, leaving a large, open space. The people on the wall looked at each other. What did Wang Sheng mean? No one could guess. A swarm of human-shaped, man-eating ants swarmed to the center of the clearing. Wang Sheng whistled, and the swarm of human-shaped, man-eating ants split up and retreated back into the surrounding man-eating ant colony. I'll bring one of you out. Wang Sheng shouted to Elder Shi. He stayed in there for more than a year, and his body couldn't take it anymore. Is there a doctor here? Hurry and take him in for treatment. Ask him yourself what happened. I have one more person to send. After this greeting, Wang Sheng turned and glided away. The man-eating ant army that had just surrounded the base also began to leave layer by layer. In less than 20 minutes, they had completely disappeared. Only then did the Shi family realize what had happened. Elder Shi looked at the man lying on the ground and thought of what Wang Sheng had said. He was so shocked that he didn't even bother to go out from the gate below. He jumped out and carried the leader of the Shi family in his arms. He shouted inside, "Open the gate! Get the doctor here!" As the leader of the base in the land of Thousand Despair, Elder Shi was naturally qualified to know some of the Shi family secrets. Moreover, he knew the person in front of him. They had a good relationship in the past. Ever since the leader of the Shi family entered the core of the land of Thousand Despair to search for the peerless treasure, there had been no news of him. He didn't expect Wang Sheng to bring him back. Everyone who came out from the core of the land of Thousand Despair would have some physical problems. It was normal for them to be weak. So Elder Shi finally understood what Wang Sheng meant when he said that his body couldn't take it anymore after staying in there for more than a year. The only person to blame was the leader of the Shi family. He didn't have the time to tidy up his appearance during his stay in there. He had a big beard on his face, so he didn't recognize him when he first appeared. Since the leader was brought out by Wang Sheng, and Wang Sheng said that he would ask him questions, something must have happened inside. Elder Shi didn't dare to delay. He immediately ordered the doctor to treat him with the best medicine. At the same time, he sent the highest level signal to the king of the Shi kingdom. Every family had been in the land of thousand despair for a long time. It was enough for them to tame a group of flying demonic beasts that could deliver messages. With the example set by the imperial treasury, there were many experts who could do this. Even if they couldn't tame a flying mount, couldn't they tame a few flying demonic beasts that could deliver messages? Leaving aside the chaos in the Shi family's camp, it took Wangsheng another 2 days to send the leader of the Gan family to the Gan family's camp. Because it took a long time, Wangsheng used 2 more pills on the way. At the same time, he used the 9 secret words to hang the leader of the Gan family's body. He couldn't let his condition worsen, but he wouldn't get better either. The same chaos happened in the Gan family's camp. But relatively speaking, the Gan family situation was better. At the very least, they felt that other than the time when they had chased Wangsheng into the land of thousand despair, they hadn't done anything that they didn't want to deal with Wangsheng. The feeling of fear was just a little less, but it was enough to make every member of the base break out in a cold sweat. They also hurriedly brought the leader back to the base, treated him with the best medicine, and sent a message to the king. They couldn't care less about anything else. Wangsheng sent the 2 back to their respective bases. Then, his weak appearance changed, and he became very normal. With the 5 secret words, formula of the 9 secret words, to clean his body, and the time he spent in there wasn't very long, Wangsheng was fully capable of recovering in a day or 2. Chapter 970. Unlike the leaders of the Shi family and the Gan family, although Wangsheng was also in the core, Wangsheng was more careful. Not to mention that the time was short, Wangsheng also stopped his endless cultivation in time, so that he would not be tempted by the high concentration of spiritual energy inside. This was the foundation. Of course, this was inseparable from the strength of the 5-word formula of the 9 secret words. Originally, the 9 words had only one function, but when combined, with the help of various aspects, it was unbelievably powerful. Just the 5-word formula was already so terrifying. Wangsheng really looked forward to the day when he perfected the 9-word formula. What kind of power would it have? He believed that it would definitely make old Taoist Ling Su dumbfounded. Now, Wangsheng also could not wait to rush to the underground palace. The reason why he was in such a hurry was because Wangsheng found that only half of the Ba Wei soul was left in the soul space, which was still shadow. The rest of the soul had been replaced by a colorful, solid part. Wangsheng did not have the slightest scruple while cultivating in the periphery of the land of thousand extremes. Even when he sent the 2 back to their respective bases, Wangsheng cultivated for a while on the way. At that time, the 2 were so weak that they were about to faint and lose consciousness. It was impossible for them to find out that Wangsheng, who was as weak as them, could still cultivate. The Ba Wei's transformation was about to be completed, so Wangsheng was not very worried. However, after coming out of the core glacier basin of the land of thousand extremes, Wangsheng thought that the spiritual energy ice in the big pool in his soul space would turn into a liquid state. After all, it was normal outside after leaving the extremely cold place. But the problem was it did not. The spiritual energy ice in the big pool was still ice, and there was no sign of it melting. It had been 2 or 3 days, but it was still in the state of ice. In particular, the ice pipe that led to the Ba Wei's mouth was still in the state of being double connected, constantly sending the spiritual energy ice into the Ba Wei's mouth, and at the same time, sending the spiritual energy ice that the Ba Wei spat out back into the big pool. With every weekday of Wangsheng's cultivation, a big or small spiritual energy ice would be integrated into the big pool. When it was in the core, the ice was bigger. When they were outside, the ice is smaller. What was similar was that they were all ice cubes and had not melted. Wangsheng himself didn't feel anything strange. He used his spiritual qi as usual and cultivated as usual. He even tried to use the primordial Guan hand a few times, but it was no different from usual. Other than the spiritual liquid in his source spirit space, turning into spiritual chi ice cubes, there didn't seem to be any difference. However, Wang Sheng was an outsider after all. He did not know if such a situation would occur in real cultivation. Therefore, it was necessary to ask the old Taoist for advice before the Black Viper Rebellion. If there was any trouble, he could still remedy it in time. Otherwise, it would be more and more difficult to deal with it after the venomous snake transformation. Wang Xing knew very well that no matter what kind of problems there were in cultivation, it was best to solve them when one's cultivation was still low. The higher one's cultivation, the more things would be involved, and the more troublesome it would be. On this side, Wang Sheng was eager to return home. On the other side, the Shi family and the Gan family were like rabbits that had been shot by an arrow. In the face of the two dying leaders, the best elixirs in the base were poured into the mouths of the two leaders, for fear that they would die on the spot. Fortunately, the two of them managed to put a stop to this suicidal act. They went out of their way to relay Wang Sheng's words. To use warm elixirs, one must not use tiger wolf medicine. Because of this, the doctors of the two families in the base have been scolded many times from top to bottom. However, compared to the news brought back by the two leaders, the doctor's matter was nothing. Of course, the two leaders only told the people in charge of the two bases, the two elders of the two families, about how they found Wang Sheng inside and what they thought after seeing the snow rat on Wang Sheng's back. As for whether to agree to it or not, it was up to the king and the ministers to discuss it. No matter how many things needed to be discussed, one thing was certain. No matter what, the people inside had to send a batch of supplies in. Otherwise, the two families would lose 7 experts at the peak of the legendary realm. They were at the peak of the legendary realm. Even a powerful Shi family and the Gan family could not afford to lose them. The matter of supplies could be discussed. Although they still needed Wang Sheng, since Wang Sheng could bring them out, he would not refuse to cooperate with them again. Now, the elders of the two families really didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they thought about how nervous they were when they were surrounded by the man-eating ants. They were so nervous that it turned out that they were sent back. However, the overwhelming number of man-eating ants surrounding the base was definitely not a pleasant memory. They really didn't know how the two leaders felt when they were carried back by the man-eating ants. Since they could send people back, they must have good intentions. This was also confirmed by the two leaders, and it was very in line with Wang Sheng's style, because Wang Sheng had personally told them that it was expensive. The style of asking for money was simply a portrayal of Wang Sheng. As long as they paid a sufficient price, they would always be able to get Wang Sheng to agree to send supplies. Now, the higher-ups of the two countries wanted to know if Wang Sheng's 2 snow mice, which were known to have a keen sense of smell, could really help them find the peerless treasures. Relying on manpower to dig in such a large area like a headless fly, the people outside didn't feel much, but the two leaders definitely didn't want to spend the kind of boring, hellish days anymore. On one hand, they had been digging blindly underground for more than a year and a half, and on the other hand, Wang Sheng was carrying 2 snow mice with a keen sense of smell, which were said to be able to smell things through the ice and snow. On the other hand, there was a peerless treasure lying quietly not far from the two families, but they didn't know where it was. It really made it difficult for the higher-ups of the two families to make a decision. However, both families were very clear about the fact that their advantage in the core area of the place of Thousand Despair might not last for long. Previously, in order to convince the other parties to let them cooperate with Wang Sheng, they had paid a huge price. Now that more than a year and a half had passed, in fact, it was already past the agreed time. They originally thought that 1 year would be enough time to find the peerless treasure, but the problem was that they didn't. If it wasn't for the sudden appearance of Bao Qin Yutang, which attracted the attention of the other parties, causing them to forget about the benefits of the core area of the place of Thousand Despair, they probably wouldn't even have the slightest chance. With such a huge ice city, as long as they entered, they would be able to see it in no time. Once someone entered, they would definitely be exposed, and at that time, the two families would become the target of public criticism. If that really happened, what should they do? What worried the two families the most was that Wang Sheng's large-scale opening of the path with man-eating ants had completely made everyone aware of Wang Sheng's strength in the place of thousand despair. If they didn't seize the opportunity, they were afraid that they would lose everything. Chapter 9:71. Both families were very anxious. They were afraid that the peerless treasure would be exposed, but they were also a little unwilling to share it with Wang Sheng. However, no matter how they thought about it, they could not think of a price to pay for Wang Sheng's help. Wang Sheng understood the dilemma of the Shi family and the Gan family, but it did not mean that Wang Sheng would make a trip for them for free. Moreover, Wang Sheng himself had not thought about how to deal with the peerless treasure. No matter how good the two families' plans were, they still had to wait for Wang Sheng's approval. He rushed back to the underground palace at full speed. He traveled day and night, and it only took him 3 days to reach the underground palace from the Gan family's camp. When he entered the underground palace, the old Taoist came out to welcome him. At the same time, the female killer, Aki, also came to welcome him. The old Taoist was more concerned about Wang Sheng's physical feelings. He did not care about anything else, so he asked directly, "How do you feel after going in?" Although Aki did not say anything, she probably heard the old Taoist talk about the possible problems, so she also looked worried. "It's okay. The 9 words of Buddhist incantation is enough to recover," Wang Sheng replied quickly. He did not feel too much wrong. However, the old Taoist was still worried. He asked Wang Sheng to give up resisting and carefully checked Wang Sheng's state with his own spiritual energy. After confirming that there were no problems, he was relieved. This time, Wang Sheng turned to the old Taoist Ling Su and asked, "Are you sure there are no problems? What problems could there be?" The old Taoist had personally checked Wang Sheng. He did not feel anything wrong with Wang Sheng's body. He was happy, but there was a hint of anger on his face, as if he was very unhappy that Wang Sheng had underestimated him. Wang Sheng did not waste any time. He was not afraid that Aki was beside him, so he directly asked Wang Sheng, "Old Taoist, did you feel that the spiritual energy became cold the last time you went in? Spirit chi will become cold?" The old Taoist looked at Wang Sheng from head to toe, then turned to Aki and asked Aki, "Did you do something to him just now? Why is his brain fried?" Aki blushed. She and the old Taoist saw Wang Sheng almost at the same time. What could she do? Those who didn't know better would think that Aki and Wang Sheng already had a close relationship. However, Aki also knew that this was the old Taoist way of expressing his dissatisfaction with Wang Sheng, so she also shook her head to show her innocence. The old Taoist turned to Wang Sheng and asked Wang Sheng, "Did you go in and get burned by the spiritual energy inside?" "I had a different feeling when I was inside this time." Wang Sheng knew that no matter how he explained, it would be useless. This meant that the old Taoist definitely hadn't encountered such a thing. Therefore, he could only selectively tell his experience and let the experienced old Taoist judge it for him. Next, Wang Sheng told the old Taoist exactly where he felt the spiritual energy in the origin soul space become cold when he was cultivating, where the spiritual energy turned into ice, and when the spiritual energy turned into ice. The old Taoist Ling Su listened very carefully and asked for details from time to time. As for Aki, who was next to him, she was already dumbfounded. Who would have thought that spiritual energy could change like this? It was like listening to a book from heaven. Wang Sheng didn't say what the origin soul was, and the old Taoist Ling Su didn't ask either. Everyone had a tacit understanding. Similarly, the old Taoist Ling Su didn't ask about the changes in the origin soul space. He just pondered over the changes in the spiritual energy in Wang Sheng's origin soul space. He frowned and thought hard. "Are you sure that there are no abnormalities in your usual cultivation and fighting?" The old Taoist confirmed Wang Sheng's situation again. Wang Sheng nodded seriously and gave the old Taoist an affirmative answer again. After pondering for a long time, the old Taoist said slowly, "It's not a bad thing for the spiritual energy to turn into the spiritual liquid you mentioned." After saying that, the old Taoist priest turned to Ah Chi and exhorted, "Girl, just listen to it. Don't go out and say it." Aki knew the seriousness of the matter and nodded hurriedly. This might be related to the cultivation secrets of the Laojun Taoist temple. The old Taoist let her listen for the sake of Wang Sheng, which could be considered as indirect advice. However, if she dared to casually spread it, she would be in trouble with the Laojun Taoist temple. When one's cultivation reaches a certain level, the state of spiritual energy can no longer meet the needs of cultivation. The old Taoist explained to Wang Sheng seriously. At this time, spiritual energy will slowly be condensed and compressed. When it is condensed and compressed to a certain extent, spiritual energy will change into another state. Spiritual liquid? Wang Sheng certainly understood such a transformation process. It was a simple physical process for gas to become liquid. It was just that under normal circumstances, it was temperature that caused this change, but spiritual energy needed pressure to transform into spiritual liquid. Of course, this effect could also be achieved with enough external pressure. Yes, the old Taoist nodded. After looking at Wang Sheng for a while, he said slowly, basically, only those who have reached a certain level of cultivation can start this process. Obviously, it's a little too early for you. In addition, this kind of change only happens in the acupuncture points, not in the soul space. Will this affect my cultivation? Wang Sheng did not care what realm he had reached to start this change. He only cared about one thing and could not wait to ask the old Taoist Ling Su. If you don't feel anything wrong. The old Taoist pondered for a while and said with some certainty, then there should be no problem. You're just scaring yourself. Wang Sheng was willing to believe the old Taoist's words, but he still had some reservations and asked worriedly, according to what you said, isn't it too early? After all, he was the one in trouble. Aren't there many unreasonable things in your body? The old Taoist Ling Su directly smiled at Wang Sheng with disdain. Why are you scared by just one more? Aki giggled at the side. After being glared at by Wang Sheng, she hurriedly covered her mouth, but she was still snickering. At least, the look in Wang Sheng's eyes at this time did not have any majesty under the pressure of Aki. Don't worry. The old Taoist Ling Su was even more certain this time. You haven't changed in your acupuncture points, which means that you haven't really started this kind of transformation. It's just that your soul space is more advanced, so it's not a big deal. From his point of view, it made sense. If Wang Sheng's soul space was not advanced, whose soul space was? Wang Sheng had absolute confidence in this point. Although the old Taoist Ling Su was an expert in the 12th stage, Wang Sheng was also absolutely sure that he could surpass him. By the way, at what realm will this kind of change start? Wang Sheng asked the old Taoist Ling Su. He saw that Aki was itching to listen, so this question was asked by Wang Sheng on behalf of Aki. Chapter 972. The old Taoist glanced at Aki and then at Wang Sheng. He sighed and said, when you reach the peak of the legendary realm, this process will begin. Aki was originally excited to hear a huge secret, but when she heard the old Taoist's words, Aki was stunned. How could it be? Wasn't the peak of the legendary realm the limit of cultivation? Why did the old Taoist Ling Su say that it was the beginning of the next stage of cultivation? This sudden breakthrough in her understanding of the limit made Aki completely dumbfounded. She stood in the same place, maintaining her beautiful posture, but her brain had completely fallen into a state of numbness. The old Taoist priest turned his gaze toward Wang Sheng. There was a hint of reproach in his eyes. Is this all right? Aki was just a death warrior cultivated by the Xia family. Her original soul was not a top-notch one, at most 6 stars. If she wanted to cultivate to the peak of the legendary realm, under normal circumstances, it was unlikely that she would be able to do so in this lifetime. Wang Sheng looked at Aki's face and felt a little guilty. He should not have satisfied her curiosity. However, Wang Sheng also admitted that he was actually quite curious. He thought that the process would begin when he reached the 8th or early 9th stage, but he did not expect that it would only begin when he reached the peak of the legendary realm. It was no wonder that even though they were all at the peak of the legendary realm, The three great priests of the royal family could kill an expert at the peak of the legendary realm with just a finger. A drop of spiritual liquid and the same volume of spiritual energy could have a difference of at least a few hundred times. If there was such a huge difference in spiritual energy, wouldn't it be a matter of just a finger? On the other hand, Aki was quite shocked. Wang Sheng did not know how to comfort her. Should he tell her the secret of upgrading her original soul, like Song Yin or Mei Er did? The problem was that Aki had not reached the point where Wang Sheng could trust her like the two women. Forget it, let's wait and see. Wang Sheng made up his mind and became more confident in his cultivation at the same time. After comforting Aki softly for a while, Aki also recovered from that confused state and returned to normal after a while. He had been using his original soul for a long time, so he was already used to this level. Since the old Taoist said that there was no problem and Wang Sheng did not feel any problem, Wang Sheng could rest assured and continue his cultivation boldly. Although the concentration of spiritual energy here was not as high as the inner core of the Land of Thousand Extremities, it was still not too far from the core. The spiritual energy here was much denser than the outside, but it was not as high as the inner core of the Land of Thousand Extremities. Cultivating here, Wang Sheng did not have to worry about any side effects at all. The meeting with the Shi family and the Gan family was in a month's time, so there were still more than 20 days left. Wang Sheng could fully cultivate. Originally, Wang Sheng's Nightmare Viper soul only needed half of its head to complete. Now that Wang Sheng had calmed down to cultivate, and with the ice tube in the Nightmare Viper's mouth in the soul space, his cultivation speed was a few times slower than it was inside, but it was still much faster than it was outside. Inside, this part could be completed in 2 or 3 days, but here, Wang Sheng used a full 24 days to completely condense the Nightmare Viper soul. When the last trace of color covered the Nightmare Viper soul, the entire Nightmare Viper soul immediately moved. It stood up and shook its body, and the ice tube in its mouth immediately broke into pieces and fell into the big pool. Roar! The huge Nightmare Viper roared towards the sky of the soul space. Although there was no sound, Wang Sheng seemed to hear a loud roar. At this moment, Wang Sheng was very clear that as long as he was willing, he could immediately trigger the Nightmare Viper transformation and trigger the spiritual energy to temper his body. Under the protection of old Taoist Ling Su, he could complete the Nightmare Viper transformation. However, before he triggered the Nightmare Viper transformation, Wang Sheng still endured it. His previous experiences told him not to advance immediately after meeting the conditions. Otherwise, he would miss out on a lot of surprises. Wang Sheng began to scan his soul space with his consciousness, and it seemed like there was nothing else that needed to be satisfied. The little person with battle awareness had been deducing the cultivation method on the side and never messed around. The color on the Nightmare Viper's body had already been completely covered, and there was nothing else that needed to be added. What else was there in the soul space that hadn't been completed? Looking around, Wang Sheng's gaze stopped at the big pool where the Nightmare Viper was absorbing water. This big pool in the beginning was filled with rolling clouds, which was spiritual energy. At that time, it was full. Later, after Wang Sheng cultivated again, it began to transform into liquid spiritual liquid. When Wang Sheng entered the inner circle of the Thousand Despair, it had turned into spiritual energy ice. But now, it was more than half of the pool filled with spiritual energy ice. More than half of the pool. Wang Sheng looked at the spiritual energy ice that was more than a foot deep from the edge of the pool, and suddenly had an idea in his heart. This pool that was not yet full should be the part that Wang Sheng still needed to perfect. Thinking about it, Wang Sheng immediately assumed a cultivation posture and practiced for 9 weekday. Every weekday, there would be a piece of spiritual energy ice falling into the big pool, increasing the accumulation a little bit. Although the accumulation was very slow, there was a small increase every time. This was right. Since it could still increase, then it should be the missing condition. As long as Wang Sheng worked hard to complete this, it would be fine. Old Taoist, what do you think will happen if I break through in the inner circle of the Thousand Despair? After completing the condition of the Nightmare Viper transformation, when Wang Sheng and the old Taoist were relaxing and drinking together, Wang Sheng asked the old Taoist Ling Su, "Those ferocious monsters have become vegetarians?" The old Taoist bluntly criticized Wang Sheng's wild imagination while drinking. "I have a way to stop those monsters from attacking me," Wang Sheng said to the old Taoist. "The 5-word formula is enough." The old Taoist's interest was piqued. He looked at Wang Sheng for a while before shaking his head. "It's still dangerous. As you know, the monsters are not the only scary things inside." This was the truth. Wang Sheng knew it. However, as soon as this thought came to him, he couldn't stop himself. Moreover, if he were to cultivate inside, this big pool could be filled in a month at most. If he were to cultivate outside, he would probably need to cultivate crazily for a few months. At the thought of the girl in his dreams, Wang Sheng was a little anxious. Was his cultivation too slow? "Old Taoist, how about you bring a group of disciples in as well?" Wang Sheng's heart skipped a beat. Of course, he would still be in danger. However, if the old Taoist was included, there was nothing to worry about. Bring the disciples in. The old Taoist was stunned. He suddenly didn't understand what Wang Sheng meant. Did he have to take such a risk just to increase his cultivation quickly? Wang Sheng wasn't such an impatient person. This matter has something to do with the Shi and Gan families. Wang Sheng finally understood. He couldn't let the Shi and Gan families benefit for nothing. However, he couldn't leave them alone either. Since that was the case, the Shi and Gan families probably wouldn't reject him if he pulled the Laojun temple in and the 3 families took the peerless treasures together. Let's do it. Chapter 973. If the Gan clan and the Shi clan wanted the peerless treasure, they could not do without Wang Sheng. If Wang Sheng did not help, they would not have enough time to hide from the other clans. It was also impossible for Wang Sheng to keep the peerless treasure to himself. The 2 clans would not give it up easily. If Wang Sheng really did that, he would probably have to fight the 2 clans to the death. This was not what Wang Sheng wanted to see. Since both parties were in a stalemate, why not cooperate? Wang Sheng needed 1 or 2 items from the peerless treasure, while the 2 clans wanted the peerless treasure. In any case, if the 2 clans wanted to hire Wang Sheng, they would have to pay a high price. Why not pay with the items from the peerless treasure? After all, up until now, no one knew what was in the peerless treasure. Although the Shi clan and the Gan clan had the treasure map and the legend, no one knew how many good things were in it. That meant that they did not know how much they would gain in the future. Under such circumstances, if they paid a high price to Wang Sheng and only managed to dig out something that was not very valuable, wouldn't it be a loss? Who knew how many of the items from 500 years ago were still usable now, and whether they were still valuable or valuable now? By then, even if Wang Sheng did not go overboard, the 2 clans should be able to accept it. Wang Sheng told them about the origin of the peerless treasure map. At the same time, he told them about the Shi clan and the Gan clan's purpose of entering the core area of the Place of Thousand Despair. Of course, Wang Sheng did not forget to add his own plan. After he finished, he asked the old Taoist, "What do you think?" Wang Sheng's intention was very clear. He only wanted 1 or 2 items, and the rest would be divided among the Shi clan, the Gan clan, and the Laojun temple. It could be said that the Laojun temple basically did not have to pay anything in order to get a share of the peerless treasure. It might be 30% or a little less. In any case, the Laojun temple would definitely make a profit. "How confident are you?" The old Taoist was not a kind person. When he heard Wang Sheng's question, he immediately asked back. Wang Sheng pondered for a moment, then gave old Taoist Ling Su an estimate. "I can't guarantee 30%. But I'm sure I can guarantee 20%. Then what are you thinking about?" "Cheers." The old Taoist made a decision without hesitation. "Wouldn't I be a fool if I didn't accept the benefits that are delivered to my doorstep? And when the time comes, I'll bring a group of people with the surname Qing in to broaden their horizons, and at the same time, distribute the items." Wang Sheng went along with the old Taoist's words. "You and I will find a suitable time to enter the inner circle and take a look. You can also help protect me while I try to advance in the inner circle of the lands of despair." Let's see how it feels. The old Taoist was suddenly at a loss for words. To advance in the inner circle of the lands of despair, Wang Sheng was probably the only one who dared to think of doing so. However, on second thought, even if Wang Sheng were to advance in the inner circle of the lands of despair, he would only advance to the 8th stage. He would not touch the aura of the legendary peak and cause the super demon beasts to riot. With old Taoist Ling Su protecting him, and with Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su using the 9 syllables to drive away the demon beasts, there was no problem in terms of safety. If there was no problem in terms of safety, it could be said that more than half of the problem had been solved. But were there any benefits to advancing in the inner circle? The moment old Taoist Ling Su asked this question, he already knew the answer. Obviously, the answer was obvious. There are definitely benefits. Just the high concentration of spiritual energy would save Wang Sheng a lot of effort in condensing and compressing spiritual energy. Moreover, once he advanced in the inner circle and successfully tempered his body with spiritual energy, Wang Sheng would not be affected by entering and leaving the inner circle of the lands of despair. He would not suffer from decompression sickness like other experts. By the way, the term decompression sickness was coined by Wang Sheng. The old Taoist felt that it was very appropriate, so he used this name. In short, there were a lot of benefits and very few disadvantages. Was there a need to study this matter further? The old Taoist looked at Wang Sheng and suddenly frowned. He scolded, "Did you plan this from the start?" "No." Wang Sheng replied with a smile. "I only thought about it when you frowned when I asked you." Scram! The old Taoist suddenly lost the mood to drink. "Hurry up and talk to those two. Come with me, Aki. I'll teach you a few tricks to save your life." Aki happily followed the old Taoist. Wang Sheng stood up slowly. Without tidying up, he leisurely walked out of the long tunnel. He greeted the Taoist priests and left the campsite for the Gan clan's campsite. Anyway, there were still a few days left. Even with the normal marching speed of the man-eating ants, it would be enough for them to get there. In the past 20 days, the Shur and Gan clans had discussed with each other countless times through messenger birds. Finally, they reached a temporary agreement. As for the specifics, they would have to wait for the higher-ups of a Shur clan to arrive at the Gan clan's campsite to discuss it together. By the time Wang Sheng led the man-eating ant army to the campsite, the higher-ups of the 2 clans had already arrived 2 days earlier to discuss the matter. Both clans attached great importance to Wang Sheng's cooperation this time. They sent their great elders to discuss it personally. In addition to the elders who were in charge of the campsite, there were 4 elders from both clans. This was enough to give Wang Sheng face. After a month, the 2 leaders who had been brought back by Wang Sheng, who were on the brink of death, had barely recovered. They couldn't say that they had completely recovered, but they could move around without any problems. However, whether they could enter the inner circle of the grounds of Thousand Despair again was still up for discussion. "Elders, let's not beat around the bush. Your people have been in there for more than a year. I'm afraid I'll have to bring people from the other clans in." Wang Sheng didn't waste any time with them. He guessed that they didn't want to hear any nonsense either. Hence, he was very direct. He went straight to the point. "If any of you need to bring supplies, I can make a trip there. The remuneration will be extra." The 2 elders from the Shur family and the Gan family glanced at each other and suppressed the anxiety in their hearts. What Wang Sheng said was the truth. Although they didn't like it, they had no reason to get angry. Moreover, how stupid would they have to be to fall out with Wang Sheng at a time like this? "Duke, let's talk this over," the elder of the Shur family said with a smile. It had been many years since he had become an elder of the Shur clan through many hardships. He had never spoken to anyone in such a submissive manner. Even when facing the Shur clan's clan head, the grand elder of the Shur clan, he had been able to stand up to him as an equal. But now, he had no choice but to lower his head before Wang Sheng. Yes. The Gan clan's grand elder also wore a smile on his face and spoke in a tone that suggested he was trying to curry favor. "Duke, let's talk this through. Someone has already come looking for us. Do you think I should agree? Or should I reject them?" Wang Sheng smiled bitterly at the 2 of them. In any case, this was the problem. They had to think of a solution themselves. Chapter 974. The two great elders certainly didn't know if other families had come looking for them. But was it possible? It was absolutely possible. The two families had been in there for more than a year, and they had almost run out of food and ammunition. If Wang Sheng hadn't gone in to replenish some supplies, the experts of the two families would have been trapped to death. These were the words of the two leaders, and they expressed their resentment towards their families for throwing them in there for more than a year. However, after listening to the words of the two leaders, the two great elders of the two families couldn't express their bitterness. Didn't they want to obtain the peerless treasures immediately? Didn't they want to transport the supplies themselves? Wasn't that impossible? Not to mention the Shur and Gan families, which family didn't send people into the core of the land of thousand extremes. But those who came out alive were less than 1 in 10, and they only wandered around the outer circle of the core and didn't dare to go deeper. As for those who entered the inner circle of the core, they disappeared. It was unknown if they were swallowed by the ice and snow or eaten by the demon beasts. The Shur and Gan families had lost at least 4 experts at the late stage of the legendary realm in this area. There was no other way. The real experts at the peak of the legendary realm had already followed Wang Sheng in to dig. Not to mention the manpower, even the resources that had been trapped were unknown. Wang Sheng had been recuperating in the capital during that period of time. And who could force Wang Sheng to enter the core of the land of thousand extremes again? Wang Sheng had entered when he was drawing the map, but Wang Sheng hadn't informed them, and they hadn't caught up. Now, time was running out, and the two families knew it. Because of this, the two families were extremely grateful to Bao Qin Yutang for suddenly appearing out of nowhere, and they had prayed many times in their hearts that Bao Qin Yutang would be able to hold on for a while longer and make a bigger ruckus. It would be best if he could attract the attention of the other families. As a matter of fact, the Xia family and the Qiu family were definitely held back. The Tang and Feng families' territories bordered the land of thousand extremes, so they had to be careful, and their attention was also divided. Right now, only the Song clan, Dai clan, and the Imperial clan could take the opportunity to plot against them. From Wang Sheng's relationship with these families, the Dai family could be ignored, but whether it was the Song family or the Imperial family, they were all families that had a good relationship with Wang Sheng. If they really made a request, Wang Sheng really couldn't refuse. Duke Changsheng, if anyone comes looking for you again, tell them to come to us. The great elder of the Shur clan had no choice but to put on such an attitude. Was he going to let Wang Sheng bear this kind of pressure? No matter what conditions they offer, both our clans will have the same conditions, one for each clan. The great elder of the Gan clan was also decisive. He immediately raised the price, as long as Duke Changsheng works hard again. Sure, Wang Sheng's answer was abnormally straightforward, without the slightest bit of hesitation. It's just a matter of bringing a group of people and supplies in. It'll take less than half a month to go back and forth. It's easy. With the attitude and benefits of the two clans, Wang Sheng could definitely give them half a month's time without a problem. As for why it was half a month, it was because after entering the glacier basin, the giant bear could at least save everyone at least half a month's time. Duke Changsheng, a straightforward person, doesn't resort to insinuations. Today, I'll just be frank with Duke Changsheng. The great elder of the Gan clan saw that Wang Sheng didn't take the initiative to mention anything else, so he couldn't delay it anymore. If they wasted another half a month, they wouldn't have a chance to obtain the peerless treasure. The great elder of the Gan clan pointed at the 2 snow mice on Wang Sheng's back and asked Wang Sheng, "Duke's 2 pets have a very good sense of smell. Are they able to find things under the ice?" Of course, Wang Sheng answered proudly, "They even helped me find something good in their last time. It's even deeper than the ice cave you people dug." The 2 leaders obviously knew that Wang Sheng had entered their tunnel. Otherwise, how could the formation be triggered? They weren't surprised at all. "Duke, how about this? We'll borrow your 2 pets to help us find the peerless treasure. What do you think?" The great elder of the Shur clan followed closely behind the great elder of the Gan clan. "I don't object, as long as you're willing to pay the price." Wang Sheng smiled and didn't refuse. He only asked with a smile, "I'm just curious. Even if we're looking for the peerless treasure, we should at least have a smell, right? Let the snow mice find it by smell." Hearing Wang Sheng agree without hesitation, the two great elders were instantly overjoyed. They automatically filtered out Wang Sheng's words about paying the price. Getting Wang Sheng to do something for them wasn't without a price. Since Wang Sheng had agreed, it was just a matter of piling up all kinds of bargaining chips. We have our own clues about the smell. Duke doesn't need to worry. The great elder of the Shi clan answered Wang Sheng's second question before asking, "What's the price to borrow them?" Although the others didn't ask, they were all eagerly waiting for Wang Sheng's answer. If you had mentioned a year ago, it would be simple. 50 million gold coins would do. Wang Sheng smiled and answered everyone. However, that was then, and this is now. If we borrow them now. Wang Sheng paused for a moment before continuing. 10 times 500 million gold coins. 500 million gold coins? Why don't you just rob a bank? There were only 6 people present. The two great elders, the 2 elders in charge of the camp, and the 2 leaders. The one who spoke was the leader of the Gan clan. "It's all right. If you don't think it's suitable, then don't do it. I won't force you." Wang Sheng didn't care about the other party's tone. He simply explained, "I don't care. Even if we can't make a deal, we can still work together next time." At this moment, the 6 people present wished they could capture Wang Sheng immediately and coerce him into helping them. However, they could only think about it. No one dared to act rashly. Outside the camp, there was a dense mass of man-eating ants surrounding the camp. If they made a move now, everyone in the camp would be buried in the ants' stomachs. Everyone understood that, just as Wang Sheng had said, that was then and this was now. They were running out of time. It would be strange if a profiteer like Wang Sheng would help them at normal price. It wasn't strange at all for him to propose a price of 500 million gold coins. However, the problem was that the 2 clans didn't know what was in the peerless treasure. It was hard to say if it was worth 500 million gold coins. Were they really going to use 500 million gold coins in exchange for a chance to work with Wang Sheng, only to dig out something that was worth less than 100 million gold coins? Wouldn't that be a huge loss? You must be joking, Duke. The Gan clan's great elder came out to smooth things over. He smiled casually and said, "It's not certain if the thing inside is worth 500 million gold coins. Then let's change the way we work together." Wang Sheng was waiting for him to say this. Chapter 975. Another way. The 2 great elders looked at each other, and then at their own men. Then they turned back to Wang Sheng. The great elder of the Shi clan frowned and asked, "What other way? No matter how many things we find, I want 40%. Wang Sheng said without hesitation. "Impossible." The 2 great elders shouted at the same time. What a joke. The Shi clan and the Gan clan had paid such a high price. One of their 10 legendary experts had died, and the remaining 9 had been digging in the core of the place of Thousand Despair for more than a year. This didn't include the people who died on the way, nor did it include the people who died in order to collect the peerless treasure map. It was such a huge cost, and Wang Sheng wanted 40% of it. What a dream. Then you choose. Wang Sheng put on a generous posture and said, 500 million gold coins, or 40%. You choose. The 2 clans glared at Wang Sheng, but Wang Sheng acted as if he didn't see them. After waiting for a while, no one said anything. Then Wang Sheng said, "It's okay. As I said, even if we can't make a deal, we'll still be benevolent. Then let's just talk about sending things and people in. 1 million gold coins for a round trip. Isn't that too much?" It was just a trip, and the job of leading the way required 1 million gold coins. This was daylight robbery. However, none of them dared to say anything. That was because they all knew in their hearts that Wang Sheng's offer was not an exorbitant one. Not only did Wang Sheng have to bring people back and forth, he also had to ensure the safety of those who obeyed him. This was no small matter. Without Wang Sheng, no matter how many people went in, they would die. 1 million gold coins for so many experts and supplies was definitely worth it. The problem was that the 2 clans didn't just want to bring people and things in. If they didn't hurry up and Wang Sheng came back and brought people from other clans, they would definitely discover their ice city. When that happened, would they still be able to monopolize it? Duke, let's talk this over. The leader of the Gon family hurriedly stepped forward to smooth things over. He was considered to have interacted with Wang Sheng the most. In terms of status, he was also relatively low among those present. It was appropriate for him to speak up. You and him still owe me the supplies I gave you and the compensation for bringing you out. It would have been better if he hadn't spoken. As soon as he did, Wang Sheng immediately said to the two leaders, "Let's settle the old scores first before we talk about new cooperation." Fine. The two of them didn't have anything to say. They could only brace themselves and ask Wang Sheng, "Then, Duke, how much do you think our previous hard work should be counted as? I've been poor lately, so I'm short of money. How about 500,000 gold coins?" Wang Sheng said casually. However, compared to the price he had just asked for, 500,000 yuan was simply a reasonable price. The Gon clan's great elder agreed without hesitation. "Thank you, Duke. I'll send 500,000 gold coins to the Duke's residence in the capital another day." It would be the biggest joke in the world if the Gon clan's great elder went back on his word. Wang Sheng didn't doubt him at all. He nodded and said, "Thank you for taking care of the business." The two families smiled bitterly. Wang Sheng was really stubborn. This was going to be troublesome. The problem was that Wang Sheng wasn't anxious at all. The ones who were anxious were the Gon clan and Shi clan. "Duke, do you think we could discuss about the snow rats?" Wang Sheng didn't have to take the initiative, but the two families couldn't. They could only take the initiative to seek a solution. The Shi clan's great elder had probably never been so submissive in his life. He smiled at Wang Sheng and said, 500 million gold coins is really too high. Then what do you think? Wang Sheng wasn't completely non-negotiable, so he asked back. Wang Sheng's sudden concession put the two great elders in a difficult position. They could discuss it, but what amount should they ask for? According to their previous plan, it would be a matter of a few million gold coins. But Wang Sheng blocked them from the start. If it was a year ago when they first entered, it would also be 50 million gold coins. How could they ask for less than 50 million? This was troublesome. Wang Sheng was willing to discuss it, but the two families suddenly didn't know what to say. Even if it was 50 million, they still felt that it was too expensive. They didn't know how many peerless treasures there were. If they really had to take it out, it would definitely be painful. The problem was, even so, Wang Sheng definitely wouldn't agree. It could only be higher, not lower. Who was to blame? If they wanted to blame someone, they could only blame the peerless treasure map drawn by the two families' ancestors. It was too simple. Even if the location was clearly marked on it, who knew that it was all buried under the ice and snow? It was originally a range, so it was even more difficult to determine the location. If it was all above ground, it would be fine. They only needed to search, and digging would be easy. But the problem was that there was ice more than 60 meters above ground. There wasn't even a bit of light at the bottom. If they really dug underground, they wouldn't even have a sense of direction. How could they find it? Originally, the two families had thought of taking advantage of the fact that they could make arrangements a year in advance to unearth the peerless treasures without anyone noticing. Then, they would take it for themselves. Who knew that after more than a year, they would only dig 2 tunnels and not even a hair of the treasures. The situation was already very critical. If the two families gave up just like that, then the peerless treasures would probably be shared by all the families. This was a situation that the Shi and Gon families didn't want to see. Wang Sheng clearly grasped this point and refused to budge. Perhaps the two families' elders could only give way. In fact, they had already considered this problem for the past month. If they really couldn't come to an agreement, they basically had a consensus on what kind of price to offer. It was obvious that now was the time to take out that consensus. 40% is really too much, Duke. The Gon family's elder also put on a negotiating posture and said to Wang Sheng, "Duke, you can take 40%, but our two families have worked so hard for only 30% each. This doesn't make sense, does it? If you don't take out 40%, you won't even get 30%. Wang Sheng was unmoved and bluntly stated the two families' current situation. What followed was naturally a battle of words. Both sides put forward the facts and reason. One side desperately tried to press down, while the other side refused to give up no matter what. Thus, they were in a deadlock. In the end, the heavens didn't disappoint those who persevered. After a round of attacks from the two elders and four others, Wang Sheng reluctantly lowered his share to 30%. However, 30% was probably an unbearable price for the two families. They had no choice but to continue. For 2 whole days, the 7 of them spent all their time in this room other than eating. In the end, both sides took a step back. Wang Sheng took 25%, which was a quarter. The remaining 3/4 were split equally between the Shi and Gan families. What do we set off? Negotiating with Wang Sheng was more tiring than fighting. After finally reaching an agreement, the Gan family's elder finally asked with a dry mouth. Chapter 976. Wait until your men are ready. Wang Sheng looked dizzy and replied lazily, I'll go and get my men ready. Is 10 days enough? Your men? The two great elders were startled. The one from the Shi family asked, Duke, you still want to bring people? How refreshing. Wang Sheng snapped at the two of them. Why don't I accompany you two to earn some points? Or should I accompany you to dig bit by bit? The two of them thought about it and felt that it made sense. However, how could they enter the core of the place of thousand despair without the cultivation of the legendary realm? Or did Wang Sheng already have experts at the peak of the legendary realm here? The first thing that came to their minds was the power of the Duke's mansion in the capital. However, according to the information that the people in the capital had gathered, there were not many real legendary realm experts in the Duke's mansion. Could it be that Wang Sheng wanted to bring a group of non-legendary realm experts in? The next moment, the two of them suddenly thought of the Taoist temple. They immediately understood that Wang Sheng must be bringing people from the Taoist temple in. This time, the two great elders looked at each other and saw the bitter smile in each other's eyes. If it was Wang Sheng alone, there would be a chance for them to dig out the peerless treasures with so many legendary realm experts. They could hide a large part of the treasures and split the rest with Wang Sheng according to the agreement. Wang Sheng could only suffer in silence. Who asked Wang Sheng's cultivation to be so low that he couldn't discover their little tricks? But if there was another group of old Taoists from the Taoist temple, then all their plans would be in vain. Others might not know, but how could they not know how powerful the Qing generation old Taoists of the Taoist temple were? Once this matter involved the Laojun Taoist temple, they would not have to resort to their little tricks anymore. Playing this under the eyes of a group of old Taoist temple of the Taoist temple, did they want to fall out? That was the core of the place of thousand despair. Wang Sheng could annihilate all of them with just a thought. Forget it. Both of them had a feeling that they had run out of tricks. When they thought about it, it made sense. When doing business with Wang Sheng, did they want to take advantage of Wang Sheng? Could it be that the reputable profiteer didn't live up to his reputation? With that in mind, the two of them felt a lot more balanced. They looked at each other tacitly and didn't say anything. However, both of them understood that this was the only way. Have your people been brought in? Wang Sheng asked. The two grand elders nodded in unison. Then let's prepare for 10 days. 10 days later, we'll gather at the entrance of the Shi family's camp. We'll set off. Wang Sheng gave the two clans time to prepare. They had to prepare their people and things. At the same time, he gave the two leaders 10 days to recover. If their situation didn't allow them to, they would have to stay in the camp. As they watched Wang Sheng leave, the two grand elders didn't know how to describe their feelings. They smiled bitterly at each other. The Shi family's elder also took his leave and left with the Shi family members. When they returned to the underground palace, the old Taoist was surprised to hear that Wang Sheng had negotiated 25%. This showed that the two clans were really anxious. The old Taoist had already prepared the resources and manpower and was only waiting for Wang Sheng. 10 old Taoists of the Qing generation, old Taoist Ling Su himself, and Wang Sheng. This was the entire manpower of the temple of Laojun. As for Aki, she could only stay here for the time being. With her cultivation, she wouldn't be able to withstand entering the core of the place of thousand despair. Aki was extremely reluctant, but under Wang Sheng's gaze, she could only pout and agree to stay. 10 days later, at the entrance of the Shi family's base, Wang Sheng saw the two clans who were going to enter the core of the place of thousand despair. It can't be. The two leaders, Wang Sheng, couldn't help but show an expression of disbelief. Grand Elders, are you going to take this risk too? That was the core of the place of thousand despair. Even if the two Grand Elders were legendary experts, there was no need to take such a risk, right? Duke, our lives are in your hands now. The Gan family's Grand Elder smiled at Wang Sheng and pointed to the disciples behind him. This time, we can only succeed. Failure is not an option. Otherwise, Duke, you know the consequences too. Although he said it with a smile, there was a hint of threat in his words. It was the same for the Shi family. Each of the two Grand Elders had about 15 legendary experts. They could be said to be the most elite of the two clans. If so many of them were to die, the two clans would definitely fall out with Wang Sheng and fight to the death. This was probably a countermeasure against Wang Sheng, and it was at the expense of their own lives. Big clans were indeed ruthless. They could be ruthless to others, but they could also be ruthless to their own people. With the two Grand Elders, even if Wang Sheng wanted to do anything, he wouldn't dare to do anything. Right now, Wang Sheng did not possess the strength to fight two vassal states to the death. This forced Wang Sheng to succeed. He could not afford to fail. Seeing Wang Sheng's stunned expression, the two leaders finally felt a sense of satisfaction from taking revenge. Other than the two Grand Elders, Wang Sheng also saw the two leaders who followed him out. Obviously, a month's time was not enough for them to fully recover, but they didn't want to stay outside. Their companions were still inside, so they could only go in. I don't need to repeat the rules, do I? Wang Sheng asked the two clans. In the land of 1,000 devastations, Wang Sheng's words were the rules. Do not do anything that is forbidden. This was an iron law. Now, everyone had automatically switched to following Wang Sheng's instructions. There were no additional conditions. Seeing that everyone nodded, Wang Sheng didn't say anything else. He waved his hand, and the team set off. There were more than 40 people from the three clans, and they set off in a mighty manner. The reason why they chose to gather at the Shi family's campsite was because it was the closest to the core area and also the middle of the three parties. Along the way, the team easily arrived at the core area of the land of 1,000 devastations under the escort of the man-eating ants. In the forest at the edge of the glacier basin, Wang Sheng didn't lead everyone down immediately. Instead, he ordered them to build their own skis. This time, there were many people, so Wang Sheng's requirements were higher. The bottom of the skis had to be smooth so it was easy to slide. As for the front, he was the one who sat on it anyway, so he could do whatever he wanted. The two leaders had already explained everything to them when they returned. They knew that the skis could save them a lot of time. Moreover, it was Wang Sheng's instructions, so they got to work without hesitation. After working for half a day, the team finally finished building their skis. By the time everyone reached the bottom of the snow basin and connected all the skis into a long string, a huge white bear appeared in the distance, slowly walking towards them. Apart from the old Taoist Ling Su and the two leaders, everyone else stared at the approaching giant bear with their mouths agape. It was true that Wang Sheng could control the monsters in the core area of the land of 1,000 devastations. Chapter 977. Apart from Wang Sheng, old Taoist Ling Su, and the leaders of the two families, who were considered to have entered the core circle of the land of 1,000 extremes before, the rest were in a state of shock from the moment they entered the glacier basin. The powerful demon beasts, the icy cold and bone-piercing astral winds, and the extremely dense spiritual qi all made them feel like Granny Lu entering the Grand View Garden, a feast for the eyes. Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su sat on the giant bear and controlled the direction. Two sledges were tied to the tail of the giant bear behind them. More than 40 people sat on the sledges as they were pulled forward rapidly. The old Taoist lay in the warm fur and held a bottle of Wuyangye from the imperial treasury in his hand. He took a sip every few steps and looked quite satisfied. If I had known that you had this ability, I wouldn't have had to go through so much trouble last time. The old Taoist sighed. Previously, the two of them had walked in the snow for more than a month. Now, it was only a few hours' journey for the giant bear. It was like heaven and earth. The last time I came, I didn't have the ability to control this guy so easily. Wang Sheng patted the giant bear under him and smiled at the old Taoist. What the two of them were saying now was not confidential, so they did not have to worry about the people behind them overhearing it. Wang Sheng's explanation was said to be for old Taoist Ling Su, but in fact, it was for the two families behind them. Otherwise, they would think that he had cut corners the first time he brought them in. The two great elders did not expect to see such a scene in the core of the land of thousand extremes. The two who came back with Wang Sheng had described it in detail to them. At that time, it took Wang Sheng more than a month to find the peerless treasure from the edge of the glacier basin with 12 legendary experts. But now, according to the two leaders who came out, it would only take them a day at most to get there. Compared to before, it was like heaven and earth. This was good news for the two families. The earlier they could get there, the earlier they could excavate, and the earlier they could get the results. However, at this point, the two families had completely given up on the idea of deceiving him. Let's not talk about whether the old Taoist of Laozi Temple was easy to deceive and what would happen if they were deceived. Just by looking at the giant bear, one could tell that Wang Sheng had an absolute advantage here. To put it bluntly, if Wang Sheng wanted to, he could make all of them stay here alive. Fortunately, Wang Sheng's reputation for cooperation had always been very good. Now that the two families were on the same boat, there was no other way. Sure enough, it only took a day for the giant bear to reach Bingcheng with more than 40 people's skis. The 7 people inside had been waiting anxiously. When they saw such a large group coming, and that there were even their own people among them, they immediately cheered and rushed out of the ice city, shouting crazily. It was already close to night. At this time, no one was polite, and everyone went down the underground passage. It was much warmer down there than above. They didn't have to worry about getting frostbite, and with the big white bear at the door, they didn't have to worry about being harassed by demonic beasts. They could have a good night's rest. The next morning, Wang Sheng arrived outside Bingcheng and asked the two grand elders, "Elders, where's the smell that you mentioned previously that could allow the snow rats to follow the smell?" The two families borrowed the snow rats to use their sense of smell to help them find the peerless hidden treasure, but they still needed a source of smell. Wang Sheng was curious about where the two families got the source of the peerless hidden treasure. "Duke, you finally made a mistake." The two finally laughed when they saw the confused look on Wang Sheng's face. The Gan clan's grand elder waved his hand and a map appeared. To be exact, it was half a map. Wang Sheng had seen it before, and it was clearly the half of the peerless hidden treasure map that belonged to the Gan clan. Looking at the confused look on Wang Sheng's face, the two great elders burst into laughter. It wasn't easy to see such an expression on Wang Sheng's face. "Duke, this peerless hidden treasure map even depicts the distribution of the formation clearly. It was originally a peerless hidden treasure collected by our two families' ancestors, but we couldn't transport it out in a short time, so we stored it here." The Gan clan's grand elder quickly explained to Wang Sheng. Both families took half of the map. Back then, this map was made from a demonic beast skin from the peerless hidden treasure. It definitely has the smell of the peerless hidden treasure. It's been a few hundred years. Wang Xingdang really didn't expect this. He looked at the peerless hidden formation diagram resentfully and couldn't help but shake his head. Even if it was placed with those treasures before, it shouldn't have any smell now, right? There must be other similar demonic beast skins. The Shur clan's grand elder continued. "Why don't we let the two snow rats try?" Wang Sheng looked at the two grand elders, shook his head, and sighed. "I give up. Let's see our luck." He stretched out his hand, and 2 snow rats appeared in each of his hands. Wang Sheng grabbed one and sniffed the peerless hidden treasure map. He then placed the 2 snow rats on the snow and shouted. The 2 snow rats instantly turned into 2 white lights and disappeared from the snow in front of everyone. When everyone heard squeaking sounds, they hurriedly turned their heads to see where the snow rats went. Looking over, the two grand elders didn't know whether to laugh or cry. One snow rat appeared on the shoulder of the Gon clan's legendary peak expert, squeaking nonstop. The other appeared on the arm of the Gon clan's leader, squeaking nonstop. The two of them have obviously come into contact with the peerless hidden treasure map. Wang Sheng shook his head and shouted, calling the two snow rats back. After giving a new order, one of them went to look for a member of the Gon family. Needless to say, he must have seen the map. The other did not run far, squeaking on Wang Sheng's body. It was a simple action, but it already showed that the two snow rats had an excellent sense of smell. Anyone who had come into contact with the peerless hidden treasure map would be able to smell it. Although they did not immediately find the clues buried in the peerless hidden treasure map, the two grand elders were already sure that the snow rats had an excellent sense of smell. The Sure clan's grand elder was already a little tempted, and he hurriedly urged, "Duke, don't let them find anyone. There's no hurry. Let them find what they can find first. After eliminating them, the rest should be more or less the same." Wang Sheng gave such an answer, and the two grand elders and everyone present nodded slightly. Next, the two snow rats found the two grand elders, the Sure clan's leader, and another Gon clan expert. Finally, they stopped looking from the crowd. Under the crowd's expectant gaze, the snow rats finally stopped looking for anyone and began to sniff along the snow. After a while, the snow rats burrowed under the snow. At first, the people with high cultivation could still hear the snow rats, but later on, they completely disappeared and no one knew where they went. Chapter 978. Everyone's eyes were focused on Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng acted as if he did not feel anything. He was as steady as a mountain. After a while, Wang Sheng was too lazy to stand. He asked the giant bear to come over and lie down. Then, he lay comfortably on its front paws and waited. Only the old Taoist Ling, Su, could enjoy the same treatment. Even the 10 Taoist priests who came in with Wang Sheng and the old Taoist were not qualified to enjoy such treatment. "Just wait," Wang Sheng shouted at the people who were waiting anxiously around him. "It won't be a short time. With such a large area, it will take 1 or 2 days if we're lucky. If we're unlucky, it's hard to say. You guys should cultivate and do whatever you need to do. I'll inform you when I find it." Given Wang Sheng's attitude, no one could have any other opinions. Anyway, Wang Sheng was also resting and waiting. What else could he do but wait? They waited for more than 20 hours. During this time, 2 snow rats came back, but they ate a few kilograms of demonic beast meat from Wang Sheng's hands. Then, they went into the snow to search. Some people were curious and wanted to follow the snow rats to see where they were searching. In the end, they only followed for about 30 meters before they could no longer sense the snow rats. Once they entered the snow could cover everything. If they had not explored from the place where the snow rats went, they would not have known if there was anything in the snow or not. Just this fact alone made it so that no one dared to defy Wang Sheng in the future. Who knew if there would be a few big and small demonic beasts hiding under the calm ice and snow? The 9-peak legendary experts of the Sure and Gon families could still remember the scene of a huge bear suddenly appearing in the snow when the troublemaker of the Sure family was about to fall out with Wang Sheng the first time they came here. Wang Sheng did not seem to be in a hurry at all. Not only was he not in a hurry, but he even sat on the back of the giant bear and cultivated comfortably. Seeing this, most of the people from the Sure and Gon families frowned, asking Wang Sheng to help. How could Wang Sheng be so undisciplined? However, in the eyes of those who knew about it, especially the 2 great elders and the 2 team leaders, this was good news that could not be better. A quarter of the peerless treasures belonged to Wang Sheng. The sooner they dug it out, the better it would be for everyone. If they couldn't find it, then it would be like drawing water with a sieve. The more leisurely Wang Sheng was, the more confident he was. This was enough for the 2 great elders. In any case, he was just waiting around aimlessly. He might as well follow Wang Sheng's example and cultivate here. Anyway, with Wang Sheng around, They didn't have to worry about demonic beasts attacking them. The two great elders waved their hands. Other than the necessary guards, everyone else went into the underground tunnel to cultivate. The density of the spiritual energy in the inner zone of the grounds of Thousand Despair was beyond imagination. Those people had only cultivated once, but they couldn't seem to forget the feeling. Cultivating here would allow one's cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. It was already the afternoon of the second day when the snow mice searched, but they still hadn't found anything useful. Just when everyone was getting a little tired, Wang Sheng stood up. Everyone's spirits rose. What did Wang Sheng mean by standing up? Everyone stared at him. They only saw that Wang Sheng seemed to be listening to something. Everyone pricked up their ears, but they could only hear the sound of the cold wind blowing, nothing else. All of a sudden, Wang Sheng stuck 2 fingers into his mouth and whistled loudly. Not long after, 2 snow mice jumped out from nowhere and jumped onto Wang Sheng's arms, squeaking nonstop at Wang Sheng. A smile finally appeared on Wang Sheng's face. He reached out and gently stroked the snow mice a few times, fed them some demonic beast meat, and then put them on the snowy ground. The 2 snow mice didn't burrow into the snow this time. Instead, they obediently walked in one direction. Wang Sheng patted the giant bear. The giant bear also stood up and carried Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su in that direction. When everyone saw this, they couldn't care less about anything else. They quickly jumped onto the sled, dragged by the giant bear, and rushed in that direction. Fortunately, there was a huge bear. Otherwise, the 2 snow mice would have been able to run more than 5 kilometers away from the snow-covered ground. If they had walked in this godforsaken place, it would have taken them at least an hour to cover 5 kilometers. The 2 snow mice stopped, but they didn't stop in the same place. They were about 2 or 3 meters apart, and they kept jumping on the snowy ground. It was obvious that they felt that they had found the right place, but they weren't convinced of each other's superiority. After a few calls, the 2 snow mice seemed to have heard each other's voices. They suddenly pounced on each other and started fighting. Wang Sheng hurriedly stopped them, and then let the 2 snow mice jump onto his back. Anyway, the 2 positions had been clearly dug out, and they could be seen at a glance. Dig down from these 2 places. Wang Sheng also seemed to let out a long sigh. He turned his head and smiled at the 2 great elders, and opened his mouth to order them. Who couldn't see such an obvious action? Although there were 2 places, they were only 2 or 3 meters apart. It was almost certain that they were in the same place. Under the command of Wang Sheng, the giant bear waved its huge claws and dug a large ice pit several meters deep in the area, with a radius of 2 or 3 meters. They originally planned to continue digging, but were stopped by the 2 great elders. They were afraid that the giant bear wouldn't know the gravity of the situation and would damage the things below. Anyway, they already knew the place, so it was just a matter of manpower. They were all experts in the legendary realm. Digging some ice cubes was nothing. Along the ice pit dug by the giant bear, a group of people built a row of steps for people to go up and down, and then continued to dig down. The 2 clans were digging, but the Taoist priests above were not idle. They used the ice cubes dug out by the people below to build an igloo on the spot. This was the method that Wang Sheng taught them, the igloo, which was absolutely windproof and warm. After digging more than 20 feet down, they were basically about to touch the ground. At this time, the people who were digging were very careful. The 2 great elders repeatedly warned them not to use brute force, for fear of damaging the bottom. Everyone had a smile on their face, especially the 2 great elders. It was really the right choice to cooperate with Wang Sheng. In just 2 days, they found the direction. Unfortunately, they would never know that the 2 snow mice didn't know what they were looking for. They frequently went up and down, just according to the orders of Wang Sheng. Even the last position was marked according to the instructions of Wang Sheng. Below this position was the place where the aura that could attract the little person with combat awareness was located. Through the thick ice layer, it was almost impossible to sense it. Fortunately, Wang Sheng knew the approximate range and carefully explored, so he didn't miss it. Now, they were waiting for the mystery to be revealed. What was it that made the little person with combat awareness feel that way? Chapter 979. There's something. Following the shout of a disciple from the bottom of the Shur clan, everyone's attention was focused on him. Don't move. The two great elders had been waiting for the news. When they heard this shout, they immediately shouted in unison, telling everyone to stop. No one knew what was down there, and no matter what they found, it was best to be careful and verify it before continuing. No one felt that there was anything wrong with that. A few important people went down, including Wang Sheng. Everyone carefully spread out, and the two elders took the lead. They crouched down and started to study what they saw. It was a very regular-looking stone. Because most of it was frozen in the ice, they couldn't really understand what it was. However, this regular shape was obviously man-made. It couldn't have been formed naturally. Although the two elders had warned them to be careful, there was still a crack on it. It was probably because they didn't control themselves when they were digging. After all, they were all legendary masters. If they used a bit of strength, some things couldn't take it. A tile. Wang Sheng was standing at the back, but it didn't stop him from seeing the shape of the thing. Almost instantly, Wang Sheng recognized it. The two grand elders seemed like they still wanted to study it properly. What was there to study? Wang Sheng shouted. Hearing Wang Sheng's voice, everyone took a closer look. Wasn't it just a tile frozen in the ice? It was just a tile. It wasn't a big deal. So what if there was a crack? Everyone was happy. Although the tile wasn't worth much, the discovery of it meant that they had found traces of a man-made building. If there were man-made buildings, perhaps the peerless treasure was hidden in the building or in the secret chamber below. The two elders had also said that the peerless treasure was collected by the ancestors of the two families. They couldn't move it away, so they hid it somewhere and drew a map for their descendants. In that situation, the treasure was definitely obtained from the Lin family, which had been destroyed by the other families. It must have been stored in a suitable place in the Lin family. Finding the tile was right. Dig carefully. The two grand elders instructed the crowd. We should be reaching the ground soon. Don't let the houses below collapse. Everyone understood that if the peerless treasure was placed in the house below, the collapse of the house might destroy the treasure. That would be bad. Therefore, everyone's movements became much lighter. Everyone was still talking, but Wang Sheng had already understood. The tile was not frozen in the ice very smoothly, but slanted upwards. There was no force underground that could cause the tiles to form such an angle. It could only be that the bottom was filled with ice and slowly pushed up. The entire building had probably been frozen solid, so it was impossible for it to collapse. There was no need for Wang Sheng to say this. He just needed to wait and see the results. Anyway, the ice was not a problem for dozens of legendary experts. Even if they used their fingers to dig, they would be able to dig out all the ice cubes. What Wang Sheng had to do was to instruct the Taoist priest to build an igloo so that it would not freeze again. While waiting, Wang Sheng also cultivated frequently. With the old Taoist by his side, Wang Sheng did not have to worry about being unable to extricate himself from being immersed in it. Anyway, the old Taoist would always have a way to wake him up. Pieces of spiritual chi ice cubes formed above the big pond and then fell into the big pond. He watched as the ice surface of the big pond in his source spirit space rose bit by bit. Cultivating in the course circle was simply like flying. While Wang Sheng was sighing, he did not forget to pay attention to the progress of the excavation. The igloo above had already been built. Without the cold astral wind, the igloo was a lot warmer after it was sealed. The giant hole that was dug would not be quickly filled with ice and snow. It was enough for the people below to dig with peace of mind. After a full 3 days, the ice surface on Wang Sheng's side rose by 3 inches, and the building below was finally dug out. The building was a complete hall, but the hall was already filled with ice cubes and was frozen solid. The two experts used various methods to take out the ice cubes inside, but they did not harm anything inside. In order to maintain the integrity of the hall to the greatest extent, when they deliberately dug out the surrounding open space, which also revealed the outline of several side halls. But since the treasure was here, they did not touch the surrounding areas and decided to take a look first. In fact, from the moment they dug to the ground, Wang Sheng knew that the thing that attracted the little person with the battle consciousness was still underground and not in the hall. However, Wang Sheng did not jump out to say anything and let the two families dig down. Anyway, it was just a waste of time, and they would eventually reach their destination. The main hall was very ordinary. It was a building from hundreds of years ago and was completely frozen and well-preserved. However, the main hall seemed a bit empty. Even if there were a lot of torches, it was still very dim under the dozens of feet of ice. Wang Sheng once again put the snow mice on the ground and let them continue to search. After smelling the peerless treasure map, this time, the two snow mice did not have any differences. At the same time, they squeaked at a place in the middle of the main hall, looking very excited. This was actually the state of the little person with the battle consciousness. At this moment, Wang Sheng was standing on the ground of the main hall, but the little person with the battle consciousness had already begun to fly around in his spirit space. The 64 little people were running around, completely ignoring any deductions or anything like that. The thing that attracted the little person with the battle consciousness was already very close. It's still below. Wang Sheng gave the answer. At the same time, he did not forget to remind the two families, it doesn't matter if you're digging or looking for a mechanism, be careful of the array. This was just a reminder. Everyone knew that it was a good intention. However, no one actually took it to heart. An array from hundreds of years ago in this ice field, without the support of spiritual energy, could it still operate? While not taken to heart, everyone completely forgot that there were so many arrays in the core area of the Thousand Despair, which one of them did not exist in the ice field for hundreds of years and still have such a strong effect. Of course, everyone could also understand that there was a super demonic beast sealed in the ice mountain. That was the source of the array's spiritual energy. But in this place, they were very close to the peerless treasure. Could there still be a problem? Search carefully. See if there is any tunnel entrance. The two great elders urged everyone to start working. Start from the outside. More than 10 people began to dig the ground from the outside. In the main hall, there are also a few people who began to check the floor tiles one by one, not letting go of the walls and pillars. If they could not destroy it, it would be best not to destroy it. Found it. An expert who was inspecting the corner of the wall suddenly cried out in surprise and fiercely pried up a square floor tile. Just at this moment, boom, a streak of fiery light enveloped that expert completely. Chapter 980. The flame flashed, and everyone was stunned. An expert next to him was quick to react and pushed. He thought that he would be able to push his companion away, but his hand pushed directly on an invisible barrier and did not touch his companion's body. This scene was too common, too normal. Everyone didn't know how many times they had seen such a scene. It was obvious that his companion had triggered a formation and fallen for it. Although they knew that their companion was in the legendary realm, perhaps ordinary small formations would not have any effect on this level of expert. However, the fact that he did not push the barrier proved that this formation was quite powerful. After all, the companion who pushed the barrier was also a legendary realm expert. If he could not push the barrier at once, then his companion inside would definitely be injured. At the critical moment, a figure flashed next to them, and Wang Sheng appeared on the side of the two people in time. He stretched out his leg and kicked the body of the expert, who was surrounded by flames. The expert was kicked by this powerful kick and flew out involuntarily. Wang Sheng's kick was so powerful that it directly kicked him out of the hall. As the body of the expert flew out of the hall at the same time, Wang Sheng's voice sounded. Bury him with ice and snow and put out the fire. A person suddenly flew out of the hall, and the people outside almost instantly noticed it. Hearing Wang Sheng's voice, no one dared to neglect, and a lot of crushed ice and snow immediately covered the body of the expert after he fell to the ground. In just a few breaths' time, the flames on his body were extinguished. Everyone was shocked and broke into a cold sweat. They even forgot to think about how a legendary realm expert could not touch his companion because he was blocked by the barrier. How could Wang Sheng kick from outside into the formation? They only knew that at the critical moment, Wang Sheng saved a companion from the attack range of the formation. Just now, some people disregarded Wang Sheng's warning, but now no one dared to despise it. There was no source of spiritual energy. What was the attack just now? Everyone was vigilant. Since there was a source of spiritual energy, maybe there would be monsters or other formations protecting this place. The expert who had just been saved had just regained his composure. He quickly returned to the hall and thanked Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng smiled and accepted his gratitude. However, he reminded everyone again, be careful of the array formation. In fact, when everyone became vigilant, the danger had already been reduced by 90%. What made everyone happy was that what they had just opened was indeed a cave that led underground. Among so many experts, there were naturally formation experts. One person from each clan stepped forward to study it. After a long while, the two of them shook their heads and stood up, indicating that there was no perfect method to break this formation. Unless they were willing to waste time, they could only break the formation with brute force. More than a dozen legendary masters, under the command of a formation master, suddenly attacked a point next to the cave entrance at the same time. Amidst the rumbling, the entire hall trembled, and the resulting commotion almost caused the entire hall to collapse. The ice and snow outside were shattered and fell to the ground. No matter how powerful the formation was, it could not withstand the simultaneous attacks of experts of this level. The formation at the entrance of the cave immediately lost its effect. The pitch-black hole was completely revealed. But this time, no one dared to act rashly. Everyone was experienced and tacitly retreated. Two formation masters stepped forward and began to blow air into the hole with the array stone. This passage had not been opened for 500 years. Who knew if there was any fresh air inside, or if there was any poisonous gas? As for whether there was anything inside that would turn the air into ashes as soon as it came into contact with the wind, no one could care less. Their own lives were more important, and that kind of thing might not be called a treasure. It was originally underground. Although this giant pit was very big, it was almost 40 feet in radius, but the air circulation was certainly not as smooth as the acceleration of the formation. Everyone waited patiently for a full hour. Finally, the formation master felt that there was no problem. He called out to everyone, and then took the defensive array stone and walked down one after another. There must be a protective formation in the passage. They walked in front, and it was better than the others. At least they could discover it earlier and deal with it in time. Sure enough, it did not take long for the two formation masters to find the formation in the passage. After making a mark, the two began to study it again. The passage was not very wide, so it was impossible for several people to attack at the same time. Breaking the formation with brute force had become an extravagant hope. The two could only study it carefully and crack it bit by bit from the outside. This wait went on for another 14 to 16 hours. Fortunately, this time, the people who followed were all experts, and they had enough patience to wait. None of them showed any impatience. Didn't the ancestors of your two families leave behind any clues? Wang Sheng asked the two grand elders, who were waiting quietly not far away from him, with a confused look on his face. At that time, they did not even have time to transport out. These formations at most can only protect and prevent outsiders from easily opening it. The Sher clan's elder explained patiently. Time was short. The ancestors would not have left too many formations. Fortunately, this underground passage was sealed, and there was a protective formation. Otherwise, the ice and snow would have poured in, and then it would be frozen solid like the main hall. After breaking the formation, everyone went down the passage again. After walking down several hundred steps, he felt that he was at least 20 to 300 feet below the ground. Only then did he encounter another array formation. No wonder the two clans could not find it no matter how hard they tried. Such a thin passage. If they did not happen to find it, they would not be able to find it even if they dug for another 10 years. The depth was not right. The two formation masters continued to study the formation, and the experts beside them took turns to light them up with torches. Finally, after another 20 hours, the formation was broken. Moving forward, the space suddenly opened up, and a huge underground cave with a circumference of several hundred feet appeared in front of everyone. The light of the torches could not reach the farthest, but even so, under the light of the torches, there was already a flash of golden light in the center. All kinds of gold tools, gold coins, statues, and tools were piled up in a mess, almost forming a small mountain. There seemed to be a dust-proof formation here. After so many years, there was not a speck of dust on the gold tools, and they were still shining with golden light. Wow! The experts who came in one after another, the first thing they saw was a dazzling golden light. It was so dazzling that they were almost blinded. Everyone exclaimed in unison. When Wang Sheng came in, he did not exclaim like everyone else. Instead, he looked directly at the two places in the center. The things in those places were what the little person with battle consciousness desired, and to Wang Sheng, they were the real treasures. Chapter 981. No matter who it was, they would definitely be surprised to see this mountain of gold. However, after the initial shock, all the people present regained their senses in an instant. Experts who could cultivate to the 9th stage of a legendary realm would not be able to reach such a realm if they did not have such a breadth of mind that would not be tempted by wealth. However, the Shi family, the Gan family, and the old Taoist to the Laojun Taoist temple were suddenly on guard against each other. The peerless treasures that your two families' patriarchs collected hundreds of years ago are just a bunch of trash like this. Wang Sheng's voice rang out in the empty space, causing those who heard it to feel displeased. What did he mean by a pile of rubbish? How could a small golden hill be called a lousy toy? However, everyone present knew Wang Sheng's net worth and the approximate amount of Wang Sheng's annual income. From his point of view, this pile of gold was really just a pile of rubbish to Wang Sheng. Of course, only Wang Sheng could say that. If there was one more person who did not put this pile of gold in his eyes, then it would probably be old Taoist Ling Su. Since when did he care about gold? The rest of the people, including the 10 Taoist priests with the surname Qing, did not care about money like old Taoist Ling Su and Wang Sheng. They had no choice. Their realm was not there yet. This should only be a part of it. The two great elders did not know what the peerless treasures were, but even if it was just a mountain in front of them, it was enough to make them happy. From a perspective of the great elders of the families and the important ministers of the vassal states, such a pile of valuable gold would definitely bring enough capital to the two big families of the two countries. Compared to the Qiu family, the Xia family, and the other vassal states, the Shi family and the Gan family had definitely become rich in an instant. Let's see what else there is. Wang Sheng weakly took a few steps forward and casually pulled out a golden statue. He placed it horizontally on the ground and sat on it. Don't just stand there. Let's go in and take a look. Also, if you find any jewelry, leave it for me. I have a lot of women at home, so I don't have to waste money. Wang Sheng said the last sentence in the most ordinary tone possible, as if he didn't care about it all. However, the more Wang Sheng said this, the more it seemed that Wang Sheng really didn't care about these things. The old Taoists agreed and split up to move forward. The people from the Gan and Shi clans looked at their grand elders at the same time. The two grand elders nodded in unison. Without saying anything else, the people from the two clans also spread out. They raised their torches and looked around, wanting to see what else was in the other directions. There was another reason why everyone was spread out. It was so that they could supervise each other. When they arrived at their destination, the three families seemed to be guarding against other people's private stashes and were doing their best to keep an eye on each family. Sit, sit. Seeing that the two grand elders and old Taoist Ling Su were all standing there, Wang Sheng seemed a little embarrassed. He casually pulled out two bumpy statues from nearby and threw them on the ground. He invited them to sit. Think carefully. What other words did the ancestors leave behind? Old Taoist Ling Su very consciously kicked over one of the golden basins and sat down on it. He took out a bottle of Wuyangya and slowly drank it. The two grand elders looked at each other, and sat down on the two temporary seats that Wang Sheng had pulled out. The Gan clan Grand Elder frowned and continued Wang Sheng's words. There really wasn't anything else left behind. Otherwise, we would have found this place by ourselves, wouldn't we? Then we've worked so hard here for more than a year, just for this? Wang Sheng casually picked up a gold coin, tossed it up and down, and asked the two. After asking, he suddenly seemed to have thought of something and shouted at the people who were already inspecting the surroundings. By the way, if you have any weapons, leave some for me too. I have women I want. No one would think that these two requests of Wang Sheng were outrageous. Wasn't it just some ready-made jewelry and a few weapons to please women? How big of a deal was it? Who didn't know that Wang Sheng had a prince's mansion in the capital, where more than 600 peerless beauties lived? Everyone envied Wang Sheng's unparalleled luck with women. As for Wang Sheng's request for more jewelry and weapons, they just laughed it off and tried their best to satisfy it. At most, they would compensate in other ways. With such a large amount of treasures, how could they not make up for it? Try to keep an eye out for the Duke when you search. The great elder of the Gan clan was naturally willing to satisfy these two small requests of Wang Sheng. It was a small favor, and it didn't cost much. There was no need to argue about it. Being able to make Wang Sheng owe him a small favor was worth more than tens of millions of gold coins. The great elder of the Sure clan also didn't want to fall behind. He also shouted at his clan's disciples. Everyone had the same thought. Those who could become the great elder of the clan weren't fools. Similarly, the experts from the two clans who were inspecting the items inside were also not fools. The clan was willing to let Wang Sheng owe this favor, but it didn't mean that they had to leave all the good things for Wang Sheng. At the very least, they would pay attention to the jewelry and weapons they came across first to see if there was anything special. If there was something special, then they would pay attention to it. Was Wang Sheng someone who would easily ask for something? As for the ordinary items, they would definitely be giving face to the Duke. There really weren't fools in this world. No one knew how excited Wang Sheng was when he casually said those two requests. With the effects of the 9 words mantra's confrontation formula and the enhanced effects of the 5 words formula, Wang Sheng was able to say these two requests without batting an eyelid. Furthermore, he was able to make the people of the two clans lower their guard. Other people's eyesight wasn't good. Under the dim light of the torch, they couldn't see clearly what was inside. But Wang Sheng was different. Wang Sheng's eyesight had been strengthened by the cheese kiss transformation, and he could see clearly within a range of several hundred feet. In particular, Wang Sheng had the 9 symbolic words formula and his super hearing ability. He could emit soundless sound waves and know the silhouettes and shapes of the things in the darkness. As soon as he entered, Wang Sheng could confirm that the 2 items that had attracted the little person with combat awareness were in the center of the pile of golden weapons, and they were both on the surface. One was an ordinary-looking golden hairpin with a pendant, and the other was a sword. As for why it would attract the little person with combat awareness, Wang Sheng still didn't know. He had to hold it in his hands to figure it out. Wang Sheng relied on his strong willpower to nail himself to the golden statue under his butt. Glancing at the people who were cleaning up, Wang Sheng asked the 2 Grand Elders, "How are we going to divide this gold?" "According to the weight?" The Sure clan Grand Elder answered without thinking. Wang Sheng looked at the Gan clan's Grand Elder. He didn't think about it and just nodded. Wang Sheng didn't say anything more. All right, according to the weight. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.